Here is the last episode of What If Naruto Was Raised and Trained by Forbidden Wolves. Now let's move on to the video. The next 2 months went by fast as Team 12 completed 2 more C-rank missions. Not to mention that having a new team member made completing missions that much easier, though it took a while for them to get used to having Haku joining their team. Their eye style being unique lent a new element to the team makeup. Though it took some time to get used to when all was said and done, their team synergy was indeed first rate. Not only that, but it also seemed that Ikumo and Haku were becoming fast friends. Minato had to admit that his son's team had adapted better than he had ever thought they would have. He also noticed that Naruto had a shadow in Sarutobi's grandson Konohamaru. He had started following Naruto around and was calling him boss of all things. Minato had found this both a little comical and a little strange. However, Naruto seemed to be fond of him and even helped show him some low-rank jutsu from the academy that would help him and had even started helping him with his chakra control. Minato had also found out that Naruto and Shikamaru had started meeting regularly to play shogi. While this was good seeing Naruto form relationships and become more a member of the village, Minato had to admit it wasn't the main thing on his mind. What had been occupying his thoughts lately was the meeting he had with Naruto. All things considered, it had gone well considering that both Kushina and Jiraiya had been present, though it didn't reveal as much as Minato had hoped it would. He had asked Naruto about the mission, specifically about the technique he had used and what he had talked to his team about. Naruto told them what happened and what info he had shared. Naruto had only shared the info with his team. This said a lot about how much trust Naruto placed in them. Ironically, the only real member of his team who hadn't known at the time was Yakumo. Ikao, being his sensei and older sister figure, had already been filled in on the fact that Naruto had some of the fox's chakra due to reading his file, and Kunga would have known since Minato and Kushina had told the kids about it. But that had been when they were 9, so Naruto must have learned of it when he was in the Forest of Death, but how? Had he talked to whatever had been spawned from the sealing process? This brought up another question that begged to be asked: who had taught him how to use its chakra? During the meeting, he had asked Naruto to demonstrate the technique so Kushina could verify that it was true, and sure enough, she had confirmed it. So, the question was what to do now. If he put an Anbu detail on Naruto, it would be seen as them not trusting him, but if Minato did nothing, Naruto would be vulnerable to those who would be after him if they ever found out. Minato had enemies from the last great ninja war, and they would love nothing better than to get to him through his son. Ultimately, he decided not to, but he asked Ikao to keep a close eye on things and notify him if anything changed. To make things even more hectic, the Jounin exams were right around the corner and the Leaf Village would be hosting them this time around. Minato knew that it would be hectic as all get up and a mountain of paperwork was bound to both proxt and follow the event. Minato was also curious as to who would put their team forward to take the exam. The deadline for the submission of applications was the end of the week, as the exam was going to start the following week. Which was also the reason that Minato had called all his Jounin sensei to report on the matter. When all of them were present and Kakashi had arrived late, the meeting finally began. "Now that everyone's here, let's begin, shall we?" Minato said, not hiding his excitement at seeing who was going to enter. After a few of the people he expected to enter did, he nodded, giving them his approval as they met the requirements. A few of the Jounin decided not to enter, feeling that their teams didn't meet the standards that the exam called for. I stepped forward and with a mighty yosh. He gave his nomination. Hokage-sama, my youthful genin are more than ready to let their youth shine this year in the exam. Guy nearly shouted, making Minato laugh wryly. Having somewhat gotten used to Guy's personality, he gave his consent. Yes, our genin have been together for about a year and a half, so they do meet the requirements, Guy. They are free to enter. Minato said, getting a nice Guy pose from Guy in response. Minato-sensei, I want to enter Team 7 into this year's exams. Kakashi said nonchalantly, making Minato sigh as he knew that this would happen. After all, Kakashi was in many ways their older brother figure and he wanted them to succeed. This, however, was a bit much in his opinion. I understand, Kakashi, but could you give me a reasoning as to why I should enter them? Just because they're my children doesn't mean that they're ready, you know. Minato said, guessing that his children probably pestered Kakashi endlessly for him to enter them. I understand, Minato-sensei, but I honestly do believe that they are ready. All of them have Jounin level chakra reserves and are already proficient in both Taijutsu and Ninjutsu. Also, they have completed 31 D rank missions and 3 C rank missions. Their teamwork might not be the best of the best, but they have improved greatly. Not to mention that they're strong individually as well. Because of that, they show the potential to become Jounin and pass the exam. Kakashi reported, a slightly condescending tone seeping into his voice as he eyed the other Jounin. Well, I still think it is a bit too early for this. I'll trust your judgment on this as their sensei, Kakashi. I will allow them to enter the exams, but I wonder, have you told them of the dangers of taking the exam yet? At that question, Kakashi nervously smiled, scratching the back of his head, making Minato sigh. The copy ninja was great at a lot of things but failed miserably at others. Okage-sama, teammate is ready to enter. They specialize in hunting and tracking, but even past that they show promise and potential to pass the exams. They have their problems like any team. But when pushed, they are an efficient team and have shown that to me. They've completed 33 D rank missions and 2 C rank. While they lack experience, they make up for it in determination and ingenuity. At her concise report, Minato smiled and nodded, making Kurenai give Kakashi a smug smile, making the latter's eye twitch. Alright, if you believe that they can come together then I'll allow it, but do tell them about the dangers, alright. At this she nodded. Okage-sama, Team 10 is ready. Though they are slackers at times, they do have the potential as the next Ino Shikacho, and I've seen it on more than a few occasions. They've still got a long way to go. Shikamaru and Choji share a close bond, though Ino doesn't always like working with them. But underneath all of that, they're more than capable of passing. They've finished 35 D rank missions and 2 C rank, so they've got some experience handling the harder stuff. Asuma reported, taking a breath after his report. Minato sighed, but then agreed. He knew that they would have some trouble, but from what he has seen in the reports from Asuma, Shikamaru would be able to get them out of most situations given his intellect. Alright Asuma, I'll let them enter. Shikamaru-kun should be able to keep them safe given his intelligence, and with the three of them working together, they should be safe. Minato said, smiling as Asuma gave him a grin in response. Alright Hokage-sama, I'm not going to lie here, but I really don't think that Team 11 is ready for the exams, but I want them to enter to see how far behind they really are. At this, Minato blinked. Ryuichi wanted to enter a team that was not ready. They're the most unbalanced team that I've seen, it's almost unthinkable. Sasuke has put forth next to no effort when it comes to interacting with his teammates. After learning his sister Satsuna unlocked her Sharingan, has been doing everything to try and force his awaken. Sakura hasn't lost her fangirl attitude towards Sasuke, and because of that she hasn't really become any stronger, as she is too focused on her obsession with him. If anything, she's become a little weaker, I think, as she is letting this impact how hard she trains. Sai on the other hand still gives off a strange vibe. I don't know what's going on in his head, and it's making me and Orochimaru-sama cautious. They've done 30 D rank missions and 1 C rank, but even after all of that, they've still not improved their teamwork enough. Ryuichi reported, sighing heavily as some of the other Jounin gave him pitying looks. I understand Ryuichi, while I would normally not allow them to enter, they do need to realize just how far behind they are, and that personal skill alone doesn't make you a powerful ninja. I'll allow them to enter on the condition that you tell them about the dangers, about what could happen to them. If even one of them backs out, then they all aren't going to be able to enter. Minato said as Ryuichi nodded in return. Genma was next to speak. Hokage-sama, I believe that my team is ready to take the exam as they have been together for 1 year now and have shown great progress in that time as a team and as individuals. Their teamwork speaks for itself as well as their individual skills. I am more than confident that they are ready. Minato nodded at Genma. They do meet the requirements, Genma, they are free to enter the exam. Minato said. Finally, everyone's attention was on Ikao as it was now her turn to submit her team for the exam or decline having them take it. Ikao stated that her team was ready to take the exam. When Minato asked, she surprised him by stating that she had already informed her team about the dangers of the exam. Everyone else was surprised by this fact as well. Ikao said that she told them, and even knowing the dangers they agreed to enter if they were allowed. I believe they are ready. They have completed 35 D rank missions plus 3 C rank missions. Nobody in the room but Minato and Ikao along with authorized personnel knew that the first of those 3 C rank missions had turned to an A rank as it was listed in the team's files as a classified C rank mission. They have shown great progress and have shown that they are more than able to work as a team even with the addition of their new team member Haku. They have gone above and beyond what has been expected of them. Alright Ikao, I'll allow them to enter. If what you said is true, then I have no doubts that they will go far in this year's exam. Minato said before asking if there were any other nominations. With no one else nominating their team for the exam, Minato told them to have their applications in by the end of the week, that they were dismissed. That night when he got home, Kushina asked how his day went and he told her about the upcoming exams and that their kids would be participating in them. This caused Kushina to pause as she looked at Minato. Her face was one that said he had better choose his next words carefully or he would find himself in the doghouse to be used as a chew toy for the Inazaka clan's dogs. Kushina, we can't keep them from taking this exam forever, you know. Minato said using her infamous catchphrase. She sighed as she sat down at the table with Minato. I know, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still my babies. Kushina said with a tone of motherly concern in her voice. I know Kushina, they're my kids too, but we have to let them stand on their own eventually. That doesn't mean though that we can't show them that we are there for them if and when they need us. Minato said as he took his wife's hand in his and gave it a reassuring squeeze. She smiled as she took Minato's other hand before she leaned forward and kissed him. You know just what to say, you know. I know. Say let's get the kids and go get something to eat. Minato said, rising to his feet. And with that they gathered their kids and went out for dinner. XXXX. The next day Naruto was making his way through town when he heard the sounds of a dispute happening and quickly made his way over to investigate. When he arrived, he saw a boy around his age dressing in a black bodysuit, wearing a black hood with pointed cat ear-like appendages that had a Suna headband attached to it. A strange object wrapped in bandages was strapped on his back and he had purple paint on his face. He was holding a young boy who just so happened to be Konohamaru by the scarf around his neck as two other kids watched on in horror and fear. While blonde girls stood near him looking. Watch where you're going, you little brat. The teen shouted at Konohamaru, who started shaking. The second youth, a girl with purple clothing that ended with fish netting on the arms and legs and lastly a giant fan on her back, walked over as she said, Kankuro, put him down. We don't want to cause a scene. Kankuro simple shrugged as he said, it's fine sis, I'm just gonna first teach him a bit about respecting his elders. They won't whine too much. As Konohamaru's eyes widened a bit with fear. Oh, you gonna cry now? TSK, who knew that there were such brats in this village. It'll really make you cry. The teen said, cocking his fist back as the younger boy closed his eyes, tensing for the blow. But before he could do anything, Naruto had appeared next to him and grabbed his free wrist in a vice grip that caused him to wince as he twisted the wrist slightly to put pressure on it. What the hell, the teen said, now focusing his attention on the blonde. Before anyone could say anything, Konohamaru and the two other kids immediately brightened up. Naruto Nai-chan. They shouted as the blonde asked Konohamaru if he was alright before he turned his full focus back to the Sunanin. I am only going to say this once. Naruto said, his tone deadly serious as he turned his head to glare at the older boy, put Konohamaru down. The Sunanin glared back at Naruto before he let go of the young boy. As things were about to heat up, the sound of running footsteps broke through the tense atmosphere that had been created. Menma, Kiba and a few others came running towards the scene. Next to them was a scowling Sasuke. After they had heard Konohamaru cry out, they immediately ran to the source, even Sasuke followed, curious as to what was happening. But all of them froze when they locked eyes with Naruto's blank navy ones. Naruto looked back to the Sunanin, but found that it would just cause problems if he did anything more and released his hand from his grip. Tamari was both shocked at the blonde's speed and the fact that he basically just saved their butts from an international incident. That would have been a problem. I would think a shinobi who is a guest in another shinobi village would know better than to start causing trouble. Now get lost, and if I find you threatening a little kid in this village again, you might just lose that hand. He said in the same cold tone. Before the teen could retort, the blonde cut him off. And you, in the tree, I'm guessing that you're his teammate. You better beat it as well. At that the teen froze, his eyes widening as a teen boy with red hair and a gourd appeared in a swirl of sand. George Agara. The teen stuttered out, making everyone focus attention on the redhead, seemingly the cause of the teen's fear. Ankura, you're a disgrace to our village. You let yourself be carried away just from a bit of dirt on your clothes. If you do that again, you won't have to worry about losing that hand, I'll kill you myself. The redhead said in a flat voice, making everyone, minus Naruto, flinch. Turning to Naruto, he addressed him. I am Gaara of the Sand. What is your name? He asked. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Was what he got in response, making the redhead crack a small maniacal smile. Naruto, mother will enjoy it when I spill your blood. You will help to acknowledge my existence. He said in a crazed tone before he started walking away with the other two. But was stopped when Sasuke called out to him. Hey. He won't be the one to beat you, I will. He declared. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, remember it when you lose to me. I have no interest in any of you other than him. Gaara said, pointing at Naruto, anger seeping into the faces of the other boys. Soon the three sand shinobi were out of sight, leaving the Konoha ninja alone. Before anyone could talk, Konohamaru instantly ran up to Naruto with his two friends Jounin and Mogi as they thanked him for saving Konohamaru as the three of them started talking about how cool he was. At this a slight smile crossed his face as he nodded to them before he told them to be more careful and turned as he started to walk off. Don't think that you're some kind of hero just because you did something like that. Menma growled out as he glared at his older brother. Yeah, you're lucky that we got here or else you would been put into the ground. Kiba barked out, also glaring at the blonde. At these remarks Konohamaru, Jounin and Mogi turned on the older boys, telling them to take back what they said. Naruto turned and stared his brother down before finally speaking. I've had just about enough of your attitude, Menma. How long are you planning to keep this up? Until you're Jounin, Anbu. Because if you keep acting like you're superior to everyone else, you're going to end up getting yourself killed along with your squad. At that, Menma blinked. I know you dislike me, you think that I'm weak, that I'm not worth the time of day. Naruto listed off as he walked forward till he was standing in front of his brother, but let me let you in on a little secret Menma, Naruto said leaning in so only Menma would hear. What you think is true and what is true are two different things. At those words Menma was stunned and before he could recover Naruto went on. Let me tell you all a little something, especially you two, Naruto as he singled out Menma and Kiba, the attitudes that you have right now will get you or someone you know killed. I don't care how strong, smart, or brave you think you are, someone will die if you keep acting like no one can beat you. You need to fix that frame of mind before it gets you or some else killed. When he finished lecturing his brother and his friends, Naruto turned and left the group as the three young kids ran to catch up with Naruto. The next day while Naruto was out and about when he ran into Kakashi who gave him his standard yo. Greeting. Naruto greeted him as he passed by only for the copy ninja to fall into step beside him. I hear your team is going to enter the Jounin exam. What about it? Naruto questioned. Oh, I just thought I would give you a little advice. Never let your guard down, Kakashi said before he vanished and appeared behind Naruto. Leaf Village Secret Finger Jutsu. Before Kakashi could finish his surprise attack Naruto moved so fast that you would have thought he just used Flying Raijin. As he roared oh heck no. No one is probing my ass. Now facing Kakashi from the other side of the street. Surprised at how fast his sensei's son could move he smirked under his mask and let his amusement seep into his voice as he smiled at the young blonde, so you are familiar with 1,000 Years of Death. At this Naruto's mind flashed to an image of himself when he was 7. As a soaking wet Naruto pulled himself out of the river and rubbed at his sore backside while the younger Anko was just off to the side laughing hysterically at him. Naruto shivered at the memory before he replied. You could say that. Naruto stated with no further elaboration. Well then best of luck in the exam. Kakashi said casually like Han just tried to anal probe Naruto, oh, and that was payback for threatening my book collection. With that Kakashi vanished with a plume of smoke. XXXX. The next few days came and went till finally it was the day of the exam and all the Jounin teams that had applied were headed to the exam building. The foursome that was Team 12 made their way inside and when they got to the second floor they found a group of Jounin clamoring to get into the exam room only to be told by a pair of Jounin to get lost this exam isn't for the weak. Ikumo stopped the rest of the team and asked, isn't the exam in room 301? Yeah. Kunga replied, keeping his voice low just like she had. It is what about it? So, why are those guys trying to get into a room on the second floor, the room numbers go by floor right? She questioned. Ninjutsu? Naruto asked, the question barely audible. Ikumo nodded and motioned to the stairwell that lead to the next floor. The team nodded and followed her lead as they headed up to the next floor. When they arrived at the exam room Mikao was waiting for them outside. She smiled when she saw them, good to see you all showed up. You may now enter the exams, best of luck in there. She grinned as she watched them enter the room. Shikamaru was nervous. Here he was in a room full of people willing to kill him to get a promotion. And why was he here? Because Ino would destroy what was left of his eardrums if he didn't show up. Does she really think Sasuke will pay attention to her if she makes Jounin? Chaoji was worried. He wasn't sure they were ready for this. Of course, Asuma said he had faith in them, but some of the other ninja gathered were much more experienced than them. I just hope we come out of this alive. Ino was pacing back and forth in front of her teammates. The Jounin exams were the perfect time to impress Sasuke. Haku had helped her make a training regimen that fit into her busy schedule, but would that be enough? Sasuke-kun, I've tried to become a better ninja. I just want you to notice me. Heck, even Naruto had helped her train. At that thought her heart started to beat a little bit faster as she thought about Naruto and what he would think. Wait, what am I thinking, could I actually like Naruto? That thought made her pace more frantically. As Naruto and his team entered the room they made their way over to the wall near them. Naruto and Yakumo dressed in their normal ninja gear along with Kunga, who was wearing a grey short-sleeved shirt with a faded blue vest that had the Uzumaki spiral on the back and white greyish fur around the shoulders. A pair of black shinobi pants and shinobi shoes. Haku was wearing the new shoulder-less battle kimono that was a deep purple with black trim and a white snowflake on the back that she had gotten when she went shopping with Ino and the girls. When Naruto spied Shikamaru and his team in a corner, he led his team over to them. He gave Team 10 a grin before settling in on the wall. Haku had followed him to stand by Ino. Hey Ino, glad you guys could make it. Ino grinned. Haku, glad to see you in your new kimono, it looks fabulous on you just like I said it would. Naruto, Kunga, Yakumo, glad to see you three as well. Ino said, greeting them all. Once upon a time she would have thought Naruto strange. However, once she had gotten to know the real Naruto, they had become quick friends. Without the emotionless mask he wore, she found a witty, charismatic, and loyal friend, and maybe more than that. At this she blushed a bit. Shikamaru responded to Naruto. These exams are too troublesome. The Nara said as he leant back against the wall, while Choji just munched on his bag of chips. Naruto snickered at his friend's comment. You know Ino will beat you to a pulp if you don't give this your all, and then your mom will kill you when Ino's done. Naruto said having met Shikamaru's parents before since his mom and Shikamaru's mom were good friends, he knew that Yoshino Nara was not one to tolerate laziness. At this Shikamaru cringed at the thought of his mom chasing him around the village, yelling that she was going to kill him for giving up during the exam. Before he could go further he was pulled out of his thoughts when the door to the room was kicked in. There in the doorway stood a twin to Naruto in all but style and height. He stood crossing his arms defiantly. He sneered at the general assembly of fellow genin. Several genin glared at Menma, while both his sisters just sighed and shook their heads as they entered. The door wasn't locked. Menma. Narumi said deadpan, wishing she could disappear as she was about to deck her brother for being a moron. Mito walked in behind her and ignored her brother's antics. Noticing that every eye in the room was now focused on them, she mentally sighed, so much for not drawing attention to ourselves. As she looked around she spotted the rest of the genin from their class and headed over. When she saw Naruto and his team she smiled and nodded to him. Naruto returned the nod. The smile was a different story. Menma made his way over and started chatting with Kiba, who had been with his team off to the side, about how this was going to be fun. Narumi went to stand next to Mito. While this was happening Shino walked over to Naruto and wished him luck in the exam, and Naruto did the same as he shook hands with him, while Hinata stood next to Shino not knowing what to say. Before she could do anything Naruto wished her luck as he held out his hand, which she managed to shake without fainting. Last to arrive was Sasuke, Sai, and Sakura. After all of this happened, a Leaf Shinobi approached the group. Hey, you guys, you might want to try keeping it down a little. I mean no offense but you're all rookies right, fresh from the academy. I won't go making a spectacle of yourselves, just cool it. This isn't a class field trip. The genin said as he pushed his glasses up. Well, who asked you? Who are you anyway? Sakura questioned, making most of the group and anyone in the room who had sensitive ears wince. Kabuto Yakushi, but really look around, you've made quite an impression. At this statement the group looked around the room as most of those around the room were looking at them. You can't help it. I mean, how could you know how things work? You're just rookies. Haku spoke up. Kabuto-san, how many times have you taken this exam? Kabuto smiled. This will be my 7th time. Since they are held twice a year, this will be my 4th year. So, I guess all those rumors about the exam being tough are true. Oh man, I knew this was going to be a drag. Shikamaru stated. Hang on, don't give up hope yet. Maybe I can help you kids out a little. Kabuto replied, pulling a stack of cards from his pocket. With my ninja info cards. What the heck are those? Sakura asked before anyone else in the group. It's hard to explain, but these cards have been chakra encoded with everything I have learned over the past 4 years. He stated, kneeling on the floor as he set the deck of cards down. So, you see, I haven't been completely wasting my time. They may not look like much to the naked eye, in fact they appear blank. He said, flipping a card to prove his point. Don't want just anyone seeing this stuff. Do those cards of yours have info on the other candidates individually? Sasuke asked. They might. You have someone special in mind. Kabuto replied. I might. He responded with his normal annoyed tone. Well, my info may not be complete, but I have got at least something on just about everyone. He said, a slight bit of smugness in his voice. Including you guys, of course. So, which one is it? Give me anything you know about them, anything at all. Esgar of the Sand, then Tears Rock Lee of the Leaf. Pausing for just a second, Sasuke's eyes glanced at Naruto before adding, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, while Yao added. That last add-on to his list of names threw most of them for a loop. That's no fun, you even know their names, that makes it easy. Kabuto said, sounding disappointed as he then snatched the 3 cards from the deck with a flick of his wrist, holding them up. Here they are. Show them to me. Sasuke stated, like they held his key to victory. Okay, first up is Rock Lee. Kabuto placed the card on the floor and spun it with his index finger. What are you doing? Ino asked, puzzled at the older genin's actions. I'm infusing my chakra into the card like this. At his words there is a poof as the card's info became visible. Rock Lee, mission experience 20 D ranks and 11 C ranks, his squad leader is Guy. In the last 12 months his taijutsu has radically improved, but his other skills are shaky. Last year he got a lot of attention as a genin. However, he chose to forego the exam, so this is his first time entering. His teammate are Tenten and Niji Hyuga. At this, Hinata's eyes shifted ever so slightly that almost no one caught it, but Naruto noticed he knew about the whole situation with the Hyuga and how they had a main family and a branch family that was basically the main family's slaves in a way. Next up is Gara of the Sand, mission experience 8 C ranks, and get this 1 B rank as a genin, not much else to be honest, Hess a rookie from the sand, but there is this, he has finished every mission without a scratch. The dude's done a B rank as a genin and has never been injured. Shikamaru questioned aloud, voicing everyone's thoughts. Lastly, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, mission experience 35 D ranks, 3 C ranks and 1 B rank, very impressive I must say. At this, most of the people in the group looked at Naruto in disbelief, while Menma scowled at him. Only those who were present knew that the B rank mission was when he and Kunga beat Mizuki to a pulp after he got Narumi to steal the forbidden scroll of sealing. Sensei is Ikgao and his teammates are Kunga Uzumaki Namikaze, Yakumo Kurama, and Haku Mamachi. He ran away into the forest of death at age 8 and stayed in there 4 years before coming back. Lastly, he is one of the 4 out of 5 children of the Hokage to have a part of the 9-tailed fox's chakra sealed inside him. Kabuto finished. This made most of the other rookies blink in surprise at this information. This info made Naruto make a mental note to pass the info on to his father, that somehow a genin had gotten access to classified information he shouldn't have been able to. Kiba snorted. I just want to know how many people I get to beat the tar out of. Kabuto smiled. Well, Inuzuka-san, you're in luck. I have the info right here. Pulling out another card and applying chakra, he went back into lecture mode. This exam has teams participating from the Leaf, Sand, Rain, Grass Waterfall and Sound villages. Out of all the countries represented, the Leaf has the most, seeing as it's being held here. It seems that this year each village has sent their top genin to the exam. However, the hidden Sound village is small, it still knew those guys are a mystery. At this, one of the genin from the Sound rushed Kabuto as he pulled his sleeve back as he struck. Kabuto managed to dodge the attack only for his glasses to break. This caused several, including Sasuke, to question how he was hit, only for Kabuto to vomit. As the trio of Sound shinobi stood in front of the now spectacle-less genin as the one with bandages covering most of his face spoke up. Put this down on one of your cards when this exam is all over. The shinobi from the Sound village will be Jounin. At this, a group of shinobi appeared at the front of the room, cloud of smoke. Alright you baby-faced degenerates, pipe down and listen up. It's time to begin. My name is Ibiki Marino, your proctor, and from this moment on your worst enemy. First, you genin from the village hidden in the Sound, do you want to be failed before we've even stated? At this statement, one of the Sound ninja replied, sorry, I guess we're just a bit jumpy, sir. I am only going to say this once, so listen up. There will be no fighting unless an exam proctor tells you to. Even then, the use of lethal force is expressly prohibited, is that understood? Anyone who even thinks of testing me on this will be failed immediately. Ibiki stated with absolute authority in his voice. No lethal force, that's no fun. Another of the Sound ninjas stated, only for some of the group with Ibiki to start chuckling. Now that we have gotten that out of the way, all of you will submit your paperwork and in exchange you will be given a number. This number will determine where you sit during the test. At this, everyone was handed a paper and number in exchange for their entrance applications. Once everyone was seated according to their number, Ibiki tapped the chalkboard to get everyone's attention. Alright, eyes front. There are a few rules you need to be aware of, and I won't answer any questions, so you better pay attention the first time. At this, Ibiki started writing on the board. There are 10 questions to this part of the exam. You start with a perfect score of 10 points. For each question not answered or answered incorrectly, you will lose a point. So, if you get 3 questions wrong, your score will be 7. The 10th question will be given 15 minutes before the end of the exam. When the exam is over, you will pass or fail based on the combined scores of all team members. At this, Sakura face vaulted the desk, outrage filling her voice as she lifted her head and yelled, wait, you mean y'all be scoring us as a team? Pipe down, I have my reasons for doing so, Ibiki replied before continuing. Third, the sentinels around the room are there to catch anyone who is trying to cheat, and if you are caught cheating, you will immediately lose 2 points. If you are caught 5 times, you will be immediately dismissed along with your team. Anyone fool enough to get caught cheating by the sentinels doesn't deserve to be here. Lastly, if anyone scores no points, they and their team will be failed. You have 1 hour starting now. Everyone flipped their papers and started in. Naruto started looking over the test and instantly found that these questions were way beyond the ability of any genin. Thinking over the speech Ibiki gave, he realized something. In the academy we were failed instantly if we were caught cheating. So if that's the case, then test is not about if you know the information. The test is really about information gathering. Well, I actually think Haku might know some of this trajectory stuff because of her Senbon training. There has to be a plant somewhere in the room. Looking around, he noticed someone in his row already writing. Looks like I found one, but how to get the info? Ku chimed in that he wasn't going to help in this case since he had all the knowledge of Nine-Tailed Fox. And since the test wasn't for him after all. To which Naruto mentally face-palmed. You didn't have to tell me that one, I already knew that. Ibiki happened to notice that some of them had already figured out the true meaning of the test and were cheating. The blonde-haired girl had somehow attached a set of mirrors to one of the overhead lights with wires that were attached to her pencil. He noticed an Aburum was gathering information with his insects. While the Inuyasaka kid was using his pup to get the answers. The Hyuga were using their Byakugan. The pink-haired girl seemed to be one of the few ones not cheating and was using her knowledge to pass the test. He also happened to spy a mouse that looked to be made of ink, scurrying to a pale boy and giving him the answers. While Inichiha used her Sharingan to get the answers from the person in front of her. He also noticed a mirror made of ice above one girl as well. Naruto knew he had no good way to get the info from the plant he spotted and he couldn't get a good view of Heika's mirror as he had noticed it when he looked around. As he was lost in thought on what to do, a kunai flew right past his head, missing by barely an inch to hit the test of the person behind him to his right. As a sentinel told the rattled test taker that they had been caught cheating 5 times and that he and his teammates were to get out as their numbers were called out. Naruto missed most of it and only noticed that the guy behind him had been failed. Ibiki found it interesting. It didn't even flinch. Is he really that calm or just that oblivious? He mused to himself. After a few more teams were ejected as they were caught cheating and were eliminated, one participant in particularly was vocal about their elimination, asking how they could possibly watch all of the participants, to which the sentinel that caught him slammed him into a wall and held him there as he told him that they didn't make mistakes, that's why they were handpicked for this task, and that he and his teammates were to get out. Naruto suddenly had an idea and decided to play a foul and test the waters a bit. Naruto had noticed that he was sitting next to Sasuke and that he had already finished the given questions. Naruto put his plan into motion and used his foot to roll a smoke bomb down a few chairs. When it went off, the smoke covered the whole row. The sentinels had no idea whose it was. At this moment, with the smoke as his cover, Naruto switched Sasuke's test with his and erased his name and put his in its place. While Sasuke now had his blank test. Ibiki was almost furious at the fact that someone would try such a stunt, but he had to give whoever did it credit. It wasn't against the rules he had set, so he would allow it to slide once. Alright. Who is the smartass who thinks this is a game? He paused, not really expecting an answer to his question. He went on, fine, since I don't expect anyone to take the blame for it, then how about I just subtract 5 points from the whole row for good measure? This statement caused most of the row to flinch. I will forgive this one offense. If it happens again, I will dismiss the entire row and their teams from this exam. Do I make myself clear? After Ibiki finished his statement, Sasuke looked down to see his test was blank. He would have accused one of the other participants of cheating, but that would have more likely gotten him marked for cheating and possibly dismissed since it would have drawn too much attention. But since he remembered the answers, Hirodi would just have to rewrite his answers. He just had to move fast. Once half an hour had gone by, the 51 teams that came in had been reduced down to 39. Then another 15 minutes had passed, and once it did, Ibiki spoke up. These rules are unique to question 10, so listen carefully and try not to let them frighten you. He paused before he went on. Rule 1, each of you is free to choose not to take the final question, it's your decision. At this, Tamari spoke out, whoa, so what's the catch? Let's say we decide we don't want to do it, what happens then? If you chose not to take the last question regardless of your answers to the other 9 questions, you will get a 0, in other words you fail. And that means by default your team fails. Ibiki stated, to which there were murmurs throughout the room, that it was no choice at all on whether or not to take the question. Before this could go on, however, Ibiki spoke up, not so fast, you never let me finish. At this the room went silent. If you do choose to take the question but get it wrong, you will not only fail, but you will be forbidden from taking the Chunin exam ever again. At this, Kiba Inuyasaka stood up and shouted, that's bull, man. This is ridiculous. What kind of asinine rule is that? There are plenty of people here who have taken the exam multiple times. Ibiki just laughed at this statement before replying, I guess you're just unlucky. I wasn't making the rules before, but I am now. But if you don't want to take it, you don't have to. At this, Kiba faltered slightly, if you're not feeling confident then by all means skip it. You can come back and try again next year. Laughing at this, Ibiki went on. Now then, if you're ready. The 10th and final question, those who don't want to take it raise your hand, your number will be recorded and then you're free to go. At this, one person stood and raised his hand stating, I'm out, that's it, I'm out, I just can't do it. At this, his number and his teammates' numbers were called out as failed and they left. As if a dam had burst, one by one person after person raised their hands and left the room. When the flow slowed to a stop, Ibiki spoke up, remember, this decision is one that could change your life. If for any reason you would rather not chance it, here's the door, this is your last chance. Narumi was tempted to raise her hand as she was divided on taking the question. If she went forward and got the question right, she would be fine, but if she got it wrong, she would never be able to come back and take the exam and would be stuck as a genin for the rest of her life. Before her resolve faltered, a voice spoke out. Just get on with it already. Naruto said, getting peeved that Ibiki was enjoying this whole thing. At this, Naramis resolve hardened. The consequences be damned, she was going to make it to Jounin no matter what. Looking around, Ibiki noticed that no one else was showing signs of wavering and smiled. Well then, I guess there's just one thing left to say. You all pass. Ibiki stated. I hereby declare this part of the Jounin exam over. You all pass. At this, Sakura barked out, wait, what about the rest of the test? The test was never about the paper test, it was about your ability to gather information without being detected. Though to the one who used the smoke bomb I do give you credit. You made a judgment call that your stealth skills were not your best option, and so you opted for distraction instead of discretion. Bold choice, but nevertheless effective. Just don't think it will work every time. At this, Ibiki took off his bandana. The sight made most of the room cringed at the numerous number of scars that dotted Ibika's head. A Jounin is a leader and as such must make difficult decisions every time they go into a mission. You demonstrated that when you chose to stay. As to the last bit, to stay or not was the 10th question. Putting his headband back on before he spoke again, as I said. Before he could finish, a large black mass crashed through the window, before several kunai shot out to embed in the floor and ceiling to reveal a large banner. At this, Ibiki sighed inwardly, jumped the gun as usual. As a purple-haired 20-something woman now stood in front of said banner. Midarashi Anko. He'll be your next proctor. You ready for the second test? Good, now follow me. She said, pumping her fist in the air. Naruto mentally noted that was actually kinda cool. Bad timing though, Anko, but I should ask her how to do that later. I can think of a few pranks with that. At this, Ibiki peered around the banner and remarked in a flat tone, "You're early, again." Anko grimaced at his remark before she noticed how many people were left. Ibiki, you're losing your touch. There are still over 20 teams left. Your test must have been too easy. You must be getting soft. Or maybe we have a better group of prospects this year. He countered. Anko looked the room over before she replied, "That's so? Well, trust me, when I am done more than half will be eliminated." To which there was a murmur that went through the whole room as many of them were wondering what this crazy woman had planned. This is going to be fun. Alright, you maggots have had it easy so far, but things are going to be different come first thing in the morning. I will let your squad leaders know where to have you meet me. Dismissed. After the room had emptied out, Ibiki went around collecting the exam papers, but he paused when he got to Naruto's test, as there was a note on the paper telling him to read the back. Flipping the test over, there was a short note to inform the Hokage that somehow a genin taking the exam by the name of Kabuto got his hands on information about the fox being sealed inside him and his siblings, along with info on how he and Kunga had been given a beer rank for when they dealt with Mizuki. Ibiki blinked at this before his body flickered from the room. He needed to inform the Hokage directly about this new development. Ibiki, being the head of the Anbu T&I department, had been briefed on the status of the Hokage's kids, and since he knew that this info was classified, it begged a question. How had a genin gotten his hands on it? XXXX. The rest of the day passed in a blur as most of the genin who had finished the first part of the exam were just happy that they had finished. As they all turned in early since the next part of the exam was set to start at 8 am. The next morning found all the remaining exam participants outside Training Ground 44, as Anko had been waiting for them with several other shinobi who were sitting at a desk that had been set up outside the fenced-in training ground. Now, welcome to Training Ground 44, better known as the Forest of Death. This is where the second part of the Jounin exams will take place. Now, before I go any further, I have something to give each of you. She said, holding up a stack of papers. It's your standard everyday consent form, since you will be in real danger of dying in this part of the test, so if you plan to continue from here out, you will have to read over, sign, and turn in this form. This test will consist of a no-holds-barred battle. Each team will need to find and secure a pair of these scrolls and make your way to the tower at the center of the training ground. Anko said, holding out a set of scrolls that had kanji for earth and heaven on them. Half of the teams taking part will be given a heaven scroll, while the other half will be given an earth scroll. At this, Sakura spoke up, so that means that when this part of the test is over, at least half, if not more than half, will be eliminated. No one said it would be easy, it is a survival test after all. Oh, and this test has a time limit, you will have to fight and survive for 5 days. 5 days out there? Ino barked out incredulously. What are we supposed to do for food? Asked Choji with a look of despair on his face at the thought of going hungry. Just look around, the forest has plenty to offer you in the way of food. There's plenty of wild game and edible plants that you can eat. Anko replied. To which Kabuto spoke up. Yeah, but that's not all, though this forest also has wild beasts and predators, along with poisonous plants. This test is not only meant to test your survival skills, but also test your endurance behind enemy lines. It's designed to be a grueling test. And some of you will not make it back from this test. At this Shikamaru raised his hand and asked, so let's say mid-exam can we quit? Of course, not, you can't just say in the middle of a battle sorry I quit. Well, I guess you could, but it'll probably get you killed. At this Shikamaru muttered, what a drag. Anyway, there are a few ways to fail this test. First is if a team fails to make it to the tower with both scrolls in the time limit. Second, if one of the team members dies or becomes incapacitated and can't go on. Lastly, you are not to open the scrolls until you reach the tower. The scroll rule is to test your integrity. At times shinobi will be asked to carry secret documents that are classified. This rule simulates that. Now if there are no more questions, we're done here. Each team take your consent forms and exchange them at the booth for your scrolls, then pick a gate. She paused to take a breath. Oh, I almost forgot, one of the teams participating this year has 4 members on it, so they will be given a special scroll called the man scroll. This scroll is going to be the scroll they start with. This scroll can be used by any other team as a substitute for either of the other scrolls needed in order to pass. However, the team with 4 members must have all 3 scrolls to pass. This means that they will not only need to get both the Heaven and Earth scrolls, but they will also have to hold on to the man scroll as well. This made Kunga smirk a bit at the idea of a challenge. Haku shrugged, since it was expected that the proctor would make the test harder for the team with a number advantage. Yakumo was a bit worried since now they had a giant target on their backs. When she finished this, she turned and slimed at Naruto before winking and said, good luck. And started to walk away before turning back to the group. One last thing. Just don't die. At that, the teams dispersed to sign their consent forms and formulate a plan of action. As they did, Naruto noticed Anko walking to his team. Well, if it isn't Naruto. She said with a grin that spoke of her being ready to cause mischief. Anko, you weren't still mad about last time, are you? Naruto asked with a knowing smile on his lips as the image of Anko's bra and panties flapping in the breeze from a pole outside the T&I building. At this she replied, her voice low, don't think I won't get you back for what you did. Before smiling and walking away. As they made their way to the gate they had been assigned after they got their scroll, Naruto noticed several teams looking in their direction. As did the rest of the team. But rather than cause them to feel unnerved, the added pressure only served to harden their resolve to pass this part of the exam. Even Yakumo found her resolve to fight and prove that all her hard work paid off. As the rest of the teams made their way to the gates, one team had their sights set on Naruto and his team in particular. When the bell rang, the gates opened and the test was on. The teams rushed into the forest and Naruto's team was no exception. As they took to the trees to get the high ground and to help spot anyone on the ground. As it turned out, they happened to spot a team of ninja about 20 minutes in. They were from the village Hidden Rain and had taken to staying on the ground. At least it would have been called a team if it weren't for the fact that they were one member short. The whole team was wondering what they were planning if one of their members was MIA. As this thought went through the minds of the whole team, Naruto's sensory abilities pinged as the third member of the Rain Ninja's team came out from the tree as if it were made of water and charged Naruto. The 2 who had been on the ground came up the trunks of the 2 trees they were on. The Rain Ninja had been suppressing his chakra so he could hide and wait until his team had caught another enemy team. The trap had been sprung, but if the Rain team had been smarter, they would have let the predators that they had just caught pass by. As the pincer trap closed, Naruto spun and drew a kunai from the knife pouch on his leg to clash against the Rain Ninja that was attacking him. Haku flashed through hand signs and called out water style. Ice darts jutsu before high-speed water darts shot from her mouth towards one of the Rain Ninja. Bulkunga went through a set of hand signs and called lightning style. Lightning hound as the beast of lightning shot from his palm and streaked toward the last Rain Ninja. The Rain Ninja dodged the hound only to get hit with several senbon in the chest from Yakumo's senbon launcher as the hound came around and hit him from behind. Bull, the one who was coming at Haku, was stabbed with a solid blade of ice in his shoulder as she sent a fist into his gut, driving the air from his lungs as he doubled over, only to be hit in the face as Haku brought her knee up to smash into his face and he went down. Bull, the one fighting Naruto, went down as the gray and white wolf Naruto had summoned to watch their backs at the start of the test rammed into the back of the Rain Ninja and tackled him to the floor. The wolf's jaw ready to crush the neck of the unlucky sap pinned under him. The fight had lasted less than 6 minutes as the 3 ninja had been incapacitated or wounded. So, are you going to hand over the scroll you have? Kunga questioned, walking to the ninja pinned by Naruto's wolf. When the Rain Ninja didn't respond, he motioned to the other 2 downed ninja and said, check for the scroll. He said as Haku and Yakumo moved to check them while Naruto stood alert as his metaphysical ears were perked up using his sensory skill to check for threats. When they didn't find the scroll on either of the other 2, Kunga smiled at the Rain Ninja in front of him, his smile somewhat vulpine as he leaned in and spoke quietly. Hand over the scroll or my brother's wolf rips your head off. At this, the Rain Ninja felt a shiver go down his spine as his face blanched and he slowly reached for the scroll in his back pouch. That man's scroll was too tempting to pass up. If we had known it would go this badly, we would have gone after someone else. The Rain Ninja said as he brought out a heaven scroll and held it up. Nga took the scroll, looked it over, and then sent a pulse of chakra into the scroll to disrupt any kind of transformation jutsu, just to be certain it was real, and sure enough the scroll poofed, and in its place sat a regular old scroll. At this, Nga's face turned grim as Naruto nodded at the wolf, and just as teeth began to bite into the skin, the Rain Ninja cried out in pain as he wheezed, "Wait." But it was too late. The wolf put enough pressure on the Rain Ninja's neck till he passed out due to a lack of air. The wolf let go, leaving a nice bite mark that was sure to scar. Nga searched his body and found the scroll, pocketing it. "One down, one to go," said Yakumo. "Don't let your guard down, we're not out of the woods yet," Naruto said as he turned to his wolf. "Thank you, Kase," Naruto said. The wolf bowed its head and responded, "My pleasure, wolf's blood," before the summon vanished with plume of smoke. After they checked to make sure no one else was around, they took to the tree and headed deeper into the forest. With one scroll left to go, they made haste to find their next target and finish this part of the test. Picking their way through the forest of death, Naruto and his team soon found themselves finishing up a fight with another team of enemy ninja. However, when they finished, all they had to show for it was a second heaven scroll. So, they still needed to find and secure an earth scroll. "Too bad we didn't find an earth scroll from that last team," Yakumo stated to no one in particular. "It just means that we have 3 less opponents to deal with later," Naruto said as they kept their eyes open so as not to get ambushed again. As they made their way through the forest, Naruto happened to pick up on a chakra signature that was nearby. Naruto told the rest of the team, and they decided to take the initiative and check it out. When they arrived, it turned out that a single girl with red hair and glasses, who had just seen her team die, was surrounded by 3 ninja from the hidden rain and a dead tiger off to the side. However, these guys looked nothing like the team that ambushed them. No, these guys looked more like they were just a trio of thugs from the trees above. They heard the ninja surrounding the girl. Naruto figured that these 3 thugs happened to find her after her teammates died due to being ambushed by the cat that now was dead. The thugs must have killed it and decided that since she was out of the exam, they could do what they pleased with her. You know, they never said anything about the members of a team that happened to survive the rest of the team dying. One of them said. "Oh, I can think of a few things that we can do," another one said. "Yeah, I mean, we did save her. She owes us now," the one from before said. "Now the only question is which one of us gets to have first go." Before he could finish that sentence, a blur and a boot to the face interrupted him as he was sent flying back a good few feet. As Haku now stood where the Rain Ninja once did. Without a second thought, she brought her hands down to the ground with a cry of water style. Storm upheaval. At this, a massive amount of water came cascading down from above them, drenching the area around them and the other shinobi. At this, Kunga jumped down from the branch, flashing through hand signs. Naruto, seeing what was about to happen, body flickered and appeared next to the girl, then grabbed her wrist and body flickered a second time back onto the tree branch with the girl in tow. Haku just jumped onto the tree trunk. As he landed on the water with a cry of lightning style. Spider web. Nga's hands touched the water and a web of lightning shot out across the surface of the water. The surprise still hadn't fully worn off, and as a result he managed to take out the 2 standing Rain Ninja, who fell to the ground limp from the electricity coursing through their bodies. While the one on the floor was mopped up in the attack. "You alright?" Naruto asked with a bit of a rushed tone. "I am fine, thanks," the redhead girl replied. "Well, that's good, sorry about you getting wet though," Naruto said before spinning around, kunai drawn as several shuriken were launched at him from the bushes. He managed to deflect almost all of them, but 2 managed to graze his arm and leg. As said shuriken throwers came out of the bushes only to pause as they saw who they had attacked. Both Kiba and Shino were berating themselves, but for different reasons, while Hinata ran over to him. "I'm so sorry, Naruto." She didn't even realize what she was doing until she was already in front of him, checking him over while she dug out some of her homemade salve to place on his injuries. "Thanks, Hinata, but I'm okay." Naruto smiled down at the girl, causing her heart nearly to explode with joy. Hinata blushed deeply but fought not to pass out as Naruto was standing right in front of her. Haku noticed her blushing. Does she like Naruto? At this thought, Haku felt something she couldn't explain. Was she jealous? Over Naruto? Naruto noticed she was still on edge. "Hinata-chan, what happened?" Hinata bowed her head and Kiba spoke up. The red-headed freak from Suna killed 3 enemy ninja without even batting an eye, like it was nothing. At this, Naruto's mind jumped to Gaara. As he looked to Kiba, he noticed him shaking. He may be somewhat like Menma, but Kiba was still a ninja. To be shaken this badly, Gaara must be powerful indeed. Though maybe this was a good thing in a way, it would be a wake-up call for Kiba, hopefully, Naruto thought. As this thought rolled through his mind, Ku spoke up. "This Gaara character had the same feel to his chakra as you and your siblings do." This made Naruto skip a beat mentally for a second before he thought back. So, Hesajinch Cricky too. Ku gave a mental nod in the affirmative, though he wasn't sure which one of the tailed beast was sealed within the sand ninja. How did he kill them? Shino almost made everyone jump when he spoke with the exception of Naruto and Kunga. He encased them in the sand that he keeps in the gourd on his back. He then crushed them, killing them instantly. Naruto didn't like the sound of that and neither did Ku. Out of left field Yakumo spoke up, "Hey, you guys don't happen to have an earth scroll do you?" Kiba growled, but Hinata spoke up. "Yes, we started with it and got another from a team we took out, why?" Naruto smiled. "Perfect." Kiba dropped into a fighting stance while Akamaru started to growl as Kunga reached into his utility pouch. "Hold it, Kiba." Naruto spoke up seeing the reaction to his brother's movement. "We also ended up liberating a scroll we don't need, but our extra is a heaven scroll, so I propose a trade." Kunga held out the scroll and Kiba relaxed. Hinata took out their extra earth scroll. After they exchanged scrolls they decided to move to the tower as a group. Tuning back to the red head with glasses Naruto spoke up, "Anyhow we gotta go. Exams to finish and all that bye." He replied as he nodded to the others before they jumped up to two of the nearby tree branches. Iridid yelled in annoyance, "Hey. Don't leave me here. At least tell me your name you jackass." Naruto decided to humor her as he turned to look at her and said Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze bye. And with that said they headed off. Meanwhile, the Redeed couldn't help but stare open-mouthed, "Wait, Hess also in Uzumaki. That lying motherfucker. Also, why did his chakra feel weird? Bah, doesn't matter right now. That mummy prick told me I didn't have any living relatives and look who popped up." She huffed in annoyance before she looked at her dead teammates, before she sighed, "Well, my teammates are dead, my boss lied about me not having any living relatives, and now I'm stuck in a forest filled with a bunch of monsters, damn it." After a moment she started to make her way back to the gates of the training ground. Little did she know that there would be a surprise waiting for her when she got to the training ground gates. XXXX. Naruto and Kiba took point, while Haku and Hinata took rear guard, with the rest of the teams made up the center, as the group made their way to the tower. It took them 4 hours of grueling travel in total from the gate to the tower, but they made it. Having split up to head through their assigned door number, Team 12 soon found themselves staring at the writing on the wall. "What the heck are we supposed to do now?" Yakumo asked, confused about the writing on the wall. At this, Kunga pulled out the heaven scroll he was carrying as Naruto pulled out the earth scroll, while Haku pulled out the man scroll. "I think we're supposed to open the scrolls." Together they opened their scrolls. Smoke filled the area and a voice most of them knew greeted them. "Congratulations on passing Team 12. Naruto grinned. "Iruka-sensei, it's been a while." Iruka smiled. "Yes it has Naruto, I'm glad to see you three are doing well." He looked over to Haku and smiled. "I don't think we've been introduced, I'm Iruka Yamino. I've known these three from when I was their teacher in the academy." Haku smiled. "I'm Haku, it's nice to meet you." Naruto spoke up. "Hey, we should all go out sometime to catch up, but for now I think I just want to get some food and rest." Iruka smiled. "I bet you're tired. I'll show you around as you'll be staying here until the second exam is complete," Iruka said as he led them into the main hall. When Iruka had finished with showing them around and to their rooms, he left them to their own devices. During the next 4 days teams arrived one after the other and finally the last team arrived on the 5th day. Once that happened all of the teams were gathered and assembled in what was an arena inside the tower, with raised platforms on both sides secured with railings, a large pair of arms with their hands in the shape of the ram seal. Where the Hokage along with each team's Jounin sensei of those who passed were present as well. Seeing all the examinees finally gathered, Minato motioned to a Jounin who had his hair tucked under a bandana to address them as he nodded his head. "Good to meet you everyone. My name Heiichi Echo, your proctor for the next part of the exam." He spoke and then coughed. "First of all, I want to congratulate all of you for passing the second exam. Though, I didn't expect so many candidates to actually make it." Heiichi said, coughing again. Many of the genin wondered if the man was going to keel over with such a sickly complexion, but the fact he was a Jounin even with that meant it wasn't too likely. "It's because there are so many of you that Hokage-sama decided to change up the exams a little this year. With that I'll give him the floor to explain it, so please pay attention," he said once again, coughing like he was about to keel over. Making some of the genin wonder if he shouldn't have been in a hospital bed. "Before I start with the explanation of the upcoming event, I want to tell you all the real reason behind these exams." After the words left his mouth, most the genin had confused and curious looks. This made Minato smirk a bit before his expression turned serious. "I want you to know, without any sugarcoating or lies, that this exam is here to promote and show off the prestige and power of each of the villages that are attending," Minato said in a stern tone, his eyes losing all traces of the kindness from earlier. There's still too many applicants here. Hayate said, surveying the group of candidates. So, we will need to have a set of preliminary rounds. As whether or not you get to the main stage, that'll depend on your performance here. What the heck do you mean? Isn't this just to see who has what it takes to be a Jounin? Menma shouted. Of course, that is correct as well, this exam tests all of you to see if you have the merit to be Jounin, but there is also the reason that I was trying to explain earlier. In this exam, there will be many influential and powerful individuals that will give their assessment on all of you to see if you meet the criteria needed to be a Jounin. Because of that, whoever makes their village stand out and shine more will in turn bring more clients and in turn more missions to their village, the opposite being true for those who muddle their village's name. I want you all to show that you can shine, no matter how small the village you came from. At that, the Jounin gained determined looks on their faces as they listened to Minato's speech. Once he finished, Hayate spoke up again. Now before we start, I want to let all of you know that from this point on, you are being judged as individuals, you no longer need all members of your team to pass their respective battles in order for you to advance. Again, he broke down into another coughing fit before continuing. So, those of you who believe you can't go on, please raise your hands as the preliminaries will begin immediately. Once he asked, Kabuto raised his hand stating his chakra was completely spent. At this, Minato quirked an eyebrow since this was the same person who Ibiki said Naruto had left the note about. But he cold let him know they were onto him, so he would have to put a tail on him to find out just what it was that he was up to. Is there anyone else who wishes to leave? But no one else spoke up. He nodded. Very well, then those who will be continuing, please make your way to the balconies, those who are not, please follow the Jounin who will take you back to the village. As the rest of the competitors made their way to the stands. Once they all were ready, Hayate stepped forward and motioned to the monitor on the wall. These preliminary matches will be set up as a one-on-one format. These matches will also be paired at random. These matches will be until one competitor is unable to continue, concedes defeat or dies. As proctor, I have a certain amount of authority to make executive decisions when a battle seems hopeless to try and persevere as many lives as possible. Hayate stated with another cough. Now then, the first match pairing will now be selected. At this, the screen started flashing through pairings to see who would be fighting in the first match before finally selecting two combatants. The first will be Sasuke Uchiha versus Yoroi Academy. Hayate stated, will both competitors make their way to the arena floor? Once both of them were in front of each other, Hayate asked if both of them were ready. At this, they both nodded. Very well, begin. As the fight went on, Naruto noticed that Sasuke was having trouble as his opponent was somehow absorbing his chakra through his strange technique. The fight went on like this for a bit until he used a move that made Lee tense. Naruto noticed this and asked. Lee, is something wrong? At this, Lee looked over at him before he bowed his head. No, Naruto, Sasuke-san did the dancing leaf shadow just like it is supposed to be done. I'm just saddened that he would copy my move like that. Naruto frowned. When did he copy your move? Lee sighed. I challenged him before the first exam. During the spar I used that move to try and finish him before Guy-sensei stopped me. Hayate walked over to the downed Yoroi and did a quick once-over. Looks like Hess headed. At this, Sasuke managed to get to his knees. Seeing this, Hayate spoke again after coughing. The winner is Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto looked down at Sasuke as he walked off the arena floor with the medics to be treated for whatever he had been grabbing at his shoulder for. As he thought about what just happened, Naruto found that he lost a bit of respect for Sasuke. Is he really that full of himself? But to sink so low as to copy an ally's jutsu without a second thought or even asking. I nodded. Yes, I agree with you, Naruto-kun. Sasuke has dampened his springtime of youth by stooping to such actions. Everyone's attention was on the board as the names spun. Naruto sighed when it came up: Saku Abumi versus Shino Aburam. At this, one of the sound ninja who had taken a shot at Kabuto spoke up. Which sucker is that? Shino simply started to make his way to the arena floor. As soon both opponents faced each other, however, Naruto noticed that the sound ninja had both of his arms in a set of slings. He must have sustained injuries during the second part of the exam. Is he really going to try and fight Shino in his condition? Naruto thought. Before the fight even started, Shino told his opponent that if he tried to fight him in this condition he would lose. Naruto had to agree with this statement as he didn't see any way this could go bad for the guy. In fact, he was wondering why Hayate didn't just call the match, as it wouldn't be anything but a one-sided battle from the get-go. Who is this Saku guy? Naruto asked as aloud, to which Lee responded. He is a most unyouthful sound ninja, Naruto. I've seen him fight. Naruto was curious, just for conversation's sake. Yes, Naruto, he uses air pressure to attack from a distance, but during a fight with Sasuke his arms were both dislocated. Lee grimaced at the memory of Sasuke smiling while enjoying the pain he caused. It won't help him against Shino. Hinata commented. She had been standing next to Naruto and Haku. Her voice showing total confidence in her teammate. I'm glad you're confident he will win, Hinata-chan. Naruto said, making her blush at Naruto's statement. As the fight went on, it seemed that this Saku guy was not as handicapped as he first thought. However, it seemed like it would do him little good as Shino had released his insects and they now had him caught between both him and the bugs. At this, Shino spoke up. If you use your good arm on me, my insects will swarm you, and if you focus on them you will leave yourself wide open to me. It's always a good idea to have an ace in the hole. At this, Saku managed to move his other arm and got it pointing at the bugs and now had both sides covered as his first arm was pointing at Shino. Like you said yourself, always have an ace in the hole. Right, Zaku shouted before made his move will blow you away. However, his boast was hollow as a sudden bang drew the eyes of all those watching as Zaku was now kneeling on the ground, staring at his two now bloody arms in shock. What? How? Zaku asked through the pain. Well, Shino calmly walked up to him before talking. You see, while I was giving you that helpful advice, my insects were already moving to plug up those pesky winged holes in your hands. While an ace in the hole is good, 2 aces are better. Shino stated calmly before sending a back fist to Aka's face, laying him out flat. At this, he turned and walked back to his place on the balcony. He coughed. Winner. Shino Aburam. As Shino arrived on the balcony, Hinata congratulated him along with Kiba, while Naruto gave him a fist bump as he walked by. Nice work in there. Naruto stated, to which Shino replied. Thanks, but you better win your matches too. At this, Naruto's face became determined, giving him a nod. As the screen started to flash through names again. When the screen stopped, the next match was shown. Mitsumi Tsurugi vs Kankuro. The match between these two was over quick as the other member of Kabuto's team was taken down by his overconfidence. Thinking he had beaten his opponent only to find out that he had been fighting a puppet and was now caught in his opponent's trap. The Sand Shinobi Naruto had confronted the other day now had his opponent right where he wanted him. Now wrapped up in the puppet's arms as they constricted until every bone in his body was broken. As Miss Yumi was carried away on a stretcher, Hade announced, the winner is Kankerm. The board once again spun though names and landed on the next pairing. Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka. Would Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno please enter the arena? Hade asked. At this, Naruto perked up at the names for this fight. Turning to Haku, he smiled. How bad do you think Ino will win? Haku smiled. Ino has gotten pretty good since you and I helped her with her training. Begin. Hade announced. The battle that everyone thought was going to be relatively even turned out to be a bit more weighted to one side, as it was clear Ino was ahead of Sakura in terms of skill, seeing as she had trained harder than her opponent for this exam, with help from Naruto and Haku. When she connected with her mind transfer jutsu, Naruto shouted. You got her now, Ino. Show her how it's done. Sakura heard Naruto cheering on Ino, and that made her somewhat mad. Why is he cheering for Ino? What has she ever done for him? As Ino could hear her thoughts, she decided to open the pink-haired girl's eyes. What have I ever done for him? How about being his friend for one? All you ever did was treat him like he had the plague and avoid him. Oh, and you punched him when he startled you that one time back in the academy. I mean, have you ever talked to him or even gotten to know him at all? Sakura mentally gasped when she realized Ino could hear her thoughts, but quickly defended herself. I've been nice to him before. Ino just shook Sakura's head slightly. Prove it. Ninja art. Forgotten memories jutsu. With that, Sakura's past memories that involved Naruto were now visible to the two of them, as if they were slides on a projector. I bet you can't even show me one memory where you were nice to him or even talked to him like he was a normal person. Inner Sakura defended her other self. Oh yeah? He'll show you, Ino pig. At that, Sakura dug through her memories. As she dug and dug, she couldn't find even one. She dug even deeper still till she finally found one. Sakura was about to tell Ino to eat her words until she looked closer at the memory, but to her shock, it was not what she thought it was. The memory played clear as day for both of them to see thanks to Ino's jutsu effects. 7-year-old Sakura was playing at the park with Ino and some of the other kids. The ball they had been playing with got kicked over by the swings, and she had gone to go get it. When she ran over, she found the ball near a swing that was occupied, but the boy on it wasn't swinging. In fact, he was looking down at the ground like he was sad about something. Sakura walked up and picked up the ball. The boy looked up at her with his slightly empty blue eyes. They were a bit unnerving. Oh, sorry, do you want to use the swing? The boy asked her, which was weird because the other two swings next to him were both empty. If she had wanted to swing, all she needed to do was take one of the open swings. No, that's okay, I just came to get the ball back. Sakura said, holding up the ball and trying not to focus on the boy as he looked at her. Something about him was making feel weirded out. Oh okay. He said, I like your hair by the way. At this, Sakura blinked and started to stutter, feeling very uncomfortable around the boy, like he had some sort of presence about him that made her need to get away. Oh thanks. I have to go, don't want to keep the others waiting, bye. and with that she ran back to the others. As she did she heard a soft bye from behind her as she ran back over to her friends. When she got back Ino asked Sakura who the boy was. "I don't know who he is. He's kind of creepy but at least he said I have good hair." And with that the memory ended. Sakura couldn't believe it, Ino was right. It was in that moment of shock Ino used Sakura's body to forfeit the match. Returning to her body, Ino stood up and walked over to Sakura leaning in so she wouldn't be overheard. "You know, it's not too late. You could make it up to him by trying to be his friend." Noticing Sakura was still lost in her thoughts, she dragged her once best friend back up to the balcony. When they passed where Naruto was standing Sakura couldn't even look at him as he congratulated Ino, she just kept walking until she was by her remaining teammate and sat down. Naruto barely registered that the names Tenten and Temari were called as Ino stopped and told him about the fight inside Sakura's mind. "So, if she comes to try and apologize please be nice to her, if not for her, then for me, as a friend." Naruto gave her his genuine smile. "Don't worry Ino-chan, you know I'm not that kind of person. If she really means it, then I'll accept her apology. But she is going to have to work to prove it, I won't just act like everything is good between us, it's going to take time and a lot of hard work on her end." At this Ino smiled and hugged Naruto without thinking. As she did she felt something stir in her chest. "Wait, what is this feeling that I'm having? Do I have feelings for Naruto?" Seeing this Haku felt a slight bit of annoyance as jealousy over Naruto welled up in her chest again. Ino quickly stepped back with a slight blush on her face. Quickly saying thanks Naruto, you're a really nice guy. With that said she walked over to her team. Shikamaru and Kin were called down to fight next since Tenten and Temur's fight had ended while she talked with Naruto. As Ino walked by Shikamaru, she noticed he was about to withdraw, so she gave him a friendly push. "Do your best Shikamaru." But that she bumped him just hard enough to send him over the railing. Naruto turned his attentions to the arena and the fight that was about to go down between Shikamaru and Kin. The fight didn't last long since Shikamaru was able to catch Kin in his shadow possession jutsu. Kin found she was unable to move. "This is checkmate, just surrender." Kin was pissed but also scared as she was now forced to mimic Shikamaru's movements. As both she and he drew shuriken and aimed their attacks. "What do you think you're doing? You can't hurt me without hurting yourself. We'll just see about that one, won't we?" Shikamaru said as both of them launched their attacks and both dodged by leaning back fast. However Kin couldn't see the wall that she struck her head on, causing her to knock herself out. As her body hit the floor, Hate called the match. "Winner. Shikamaru Nara." Walking back to the spectator area Ino called out, "Nice job Shikamaru, way to get that big brain of yours to work out a win." "Nice work Shikamaru." Choji said, high-fiving Shikamaru as he made it back to his team. The screen started to cycle through names again until it stopped on the next set of fighters. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze vs Kiba Inuyasaka. At this Naruto couldn't help but laugh at the irony of how they had helped each other in passing the second part of the exam. While Kiba shouted that he and Akamaru had just won the lottery. Naruto just looked at the rest of his team when he heard Kiba's reaction. Nga looked at Naruto smirking before he said, "Show him wo's top dog." Ikumo grinned before saying, "Make him cry uncle." Aku giggled trying not to burst out laughing before she told him, "Show the little puppy what happens when he picks a fight with a big bad wolf." At this Naruto smiled remembering back to that day in the academy when Kiba had told him to stay away from Hinata. He also remembered how tough he had tried to sound. Well now it seems that the dog and the wolf were going to find out once and for all who was really the alpha male. When the two finally got down to the arena floor Kiba couldn't help but smile as he spoke. Well, looks like this is going to be fun. Don't take it too hard when you lose to me Naruto. Don't take me lightly Kiba or you just might find you bit off more than you can chew." Naruto replied calmly, a slight smirk on his face. At this Kiba just threw back his head and laughed as Akamaru jumped out of Kiba's hoodie and barked at Naruto. This only made Naruto smirk at the fact that Akamaru was trying to prove his superiority, yet all he was doing right now was making Naruto laugh on the inside. "That has to be the funniest thing you have ever said Naruto," Kiba said as he continued to chuckle. "Akamaru, you watch this, I'm going to take care of this myself." At this Hate spoke up, "If you're both ready. Begin." As soon as the words left Hate's mouth Kiba dropped to all fours in the blink of an eye rushing Naruto and struck with an elbow to the gut, or at least, that would have been what happened if Naruto hadn't dodged back, so that Kiba whiffed. Growling Kiba dashed forward throwing a flurry of strikes that Naruto dodged and or blocked while Naruto did the same causing Kiba to have to block and dodge as well before the jump back. Flashing through hand signs Naruto called. "Fire style. Fireball jutsu." And a ball of flames shot from his mouth. Kiba managed to get out of the way, but not without getting singed in several places. Not going to be outdone by the most average shinobi in his class, Kiba snarled, tunneling fang. With that he launched himself at Naruto, whipping himself into a miniature cyclone. Naruto dodged out of the way, coming up on his feet, ready another strike, wind style. Beast wave palm. But the single slashing motion of his hand, a razor-sharp wave of wind sliced toward Kiba. At this the Inuyasha shifted and dodged with feral grace, with his ninja art of beast mimicry. All fours jutsu. Charging forward, Naruto and Kiba went through another melee exchange before the two jumped back to create space. Most of the least shinobi in the room were stunned, while those who knew better just smirked. Is this really the same Naruto? They mentally questioned. Asuma spoke, voicing it before anyone else. I'll say this much, whatever Ikao's training methods are, they work. Flashing through another set of hand signs, Naruto bit his thumb and swiped the blood on his palm, slamming it to the ground, calling out, summoning jutsu. With that, a plume of smoke sprung up, and when it dissipated, a wolf the same size as Kuromeru with black and red streaked fur stood next to Naruto. Kiba blinked at this. Where did this kid get a summon contract, and with wolves no less? His shock cost him as the wolf rushed forward to strike. This forced Kiba to drop to all fours, only to have the wolf pass over him and land behind him as it turned to strike again. Akamaru charged at the wolf, drawing it attention only to have it swat him away with its paw. While he was distracted by the wolf, Naruto came at Kiba's back, but Kiba heard him coming. Spinning on his heels, he snarled out, tunneling fang. But that he launched himself at Naruto, whipping himself into a miniature cyclone. Being as close as he was, Naruto cold fully dodged and took a glancing blow and was knocked back, but managed to come up on his feet in a crouch. Akamaru came up next to Kiba, growling at the wolf as it came to Naruto's side. At this, a slight chuckle rumbled from the wolf as it spoke in a feminine voice, at least you don't lack spurt, little one. Though it seems your bark is worse than your bite. Kiba snarled out, well, just see, Wo's bite is worse. And with those words he flicked a food pill to Akamaru right before he took one himself. Akamaru's fur turned red, now looking more rabid as he growled. While Kiba turned more feral as his nails turned into claws and his canines became more pronounced. Akamaru hopped on his back as Kiba readied his next move, man-beast clone. With that, the dog turned into an exact copy of Kiba. At this, both Kibas rushed Naruto and the she-wolf. Kiba threw a set of smoke bombs out to blind Naruto and the wolf. Before the smoke cloud had expanded fully, Kiba roared, man-beast ultimate to jutsu. Fang over fang. As the pair turned into a set of miniature cyclones that tore through the smoke cloud. When the smoke cleared, standing next to Naruto was a tall black and red-haired woman in a regal black with red trim battle kimono and a red obi with a shakugan in her right hand. Kiba's jaw, along with several others in the arena stands, hit the floor at the sight of the beautiful women. Akamaru, on the other hand, had no such problems as he barked at Kiba, snapping him out of his stupor. You really think that a simple transformation jutsu in the form of a sexy woman is going to stop me? Kiba quipped, trying to cover up the fact that he was stunned by her looks. Oh, this is no transformation jutsu, she's real. Say hello again, Akiko. At Naruto's introduction, the women spoke up. I never get tired of the way they react the first time they see me in this form. Akiko stated. Kiba blinked before snapping out of his surprise. Wait, you mean that wolf is really her? Kiba roared in disbelief. Oh, come now, is the little puppy scared? Akiko chided as a smile graced her now human face. I don't bite. Much. This comment made Anko chuckle to herself as she thought, I like her. At her taunting, both Kiba and Akamaru charged, a pair readying for another fang over fang. However, Naruto and Akiko rushed forward and used their combined rush to separate the duo, so it would be harder for them to fight together. As Akamaru faced the now human-looking she-wolf, he growled and sped forward on all fours to strike. Akiko smiled at his recklessness and raised the shakugan to strike, brining it down with a single fluid motion. She hit Akamaru square on the nose. The resounding crack that was heard caused some to wince, as Akamaru now had a broken nose and was whimpering in pain. As Akiko stood speaking in a low tone, bad dog. Learn to heal. The rest of the room was in a mix of shock and hysteria, as some couldn't believe what had just happened, while others were trying not to burst out laughing at the statement. Kurenai was both stunned and at the same time trying not to laugh by covering her mouth with her hand. With Akamaru out of the way, Kiba tried for another spiral fang, but was mobbed by clones as he was launched into the air by 3 of them, while Naruto used one of the clones back as a springboard to launch himself into the air ahead of Kiba, only to bring his foot down in a spinning heel drop kick to Kiba's face, sending him back to the arena floor with a loud sounding impact as his face hit the floor. Hayate walked over and inspected Kiba. He groaned when his head was lifted to check him over for damage. Hayate stood and stated, Hess headed the winner. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. At this, Naruto nodded to Akiko, and she bowed before she turned back into a wolf and vanished in a puff of smoke. But she allowed Akamaru to get up and slowly make his way over to Kiba as the medics loaded him up to be taken to the infirmary. While this happened, Hinata met the medics before they took Kiba away and gave him some of her special salve. At this, Naruto smiled as he still had the one she gave him when she had been inspecting his wounds in the forest. As Naruto made his way back to the balcony, all eyes were on him. As he watched, Gaara started to smile as he couldn't wait to fight him. Making his way back to his team, he was met with several congratulations from both his team and others, along with a few fist bumps. Ikgao smiled, putting her hand on his shoulder as she congratulated him. "You did good in there." Naruto smiled at this as the screen flashed through names again. The lit stopped on FK versus Masa Onigami. "Would FK and Masa Onigami please enter the arena?" At his request, a lithe girl with mint green hair and a hidden waterfall hit I-8 tied around her arm, jumped the railing and landed in a crouch on the arena floor. While a lean boy with brown hair and a leaf hit I-8 hanging around his waist casually made his way down to the arena floor till both were standing in front of each other. I-8 stepped back, begin. At this, the green-haired girl rushed her opponent at high speed and struck with a hard right aimed at her opponent's head. While the brown-haired boy managed to dodge by the skin of his teeth and put some distance between the two of them. Flashing through hand signs before calling out, "Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu." As he spat a volley of small fireballs at his opponent. The girl back-flipped out of the way. While the fight was going on, a brown-haired girl from the balcony was calling out to the guy who was her teammate, "Come on Masa, show her what you're made of." Naruto knew the girl as Sasuke's older sister Satsuna. She graduated from the academy the year before Naruto's class graduated. She was also a friend of Naruto's. When he was little, she even helped to show him a few of the basics of chakra control. That was at least until he ran away. The fight was definitely fast-paced as the girl FK seemed to be controlling the pace of the fight. However, Masa was no pushover as he was giving just as good as he got. As he sent a high kick aimed at her head, she ducked and tried to sweep his legs out from under him. As his leg was swept out, he spun with emotion and landed before flashing through another set of hand signs as he shouted, "Fire style. Fireball jutsu." And launched a ball of fire at her. Jumping high into the air, she flashed through a quick set of hand signs before she called out, "Secret ninjutsu. Scaled sneak jutsu." As she opened her mouth, a fine powder-like mist was exhaled from her mouth. The powder reflected not only the natural light in the room, but also reflected the light of the fireball, which caused the powder to blind many in the room, including Masa, when his eyes refocused. FK was gone, but only for a few seconds as he heard a shout from above, "Hidden waterfall hurricane." Looking up in time only to be hit from above, FK came down with a whirlwind of force in a single strike, plowing Masa into the floor. When the dust settled, Masa was on the floor and not getting up. I-8 saw this and called the match winner. FK. At this, the girl jumped and pumped her fist in the air, while her two teammates just seemed to be unimpressed. The medics came to get Masa, and FK simply picked him up and placed him on the stretcher they had before, saying, "That was a great match, we should totally be friends and have a rematch sometime." Masa never responded, but she took the moan that escaped his lips as a yes, and she smiled, returning to her team. As the next set of names were drawn at random, the screen finally stopped on Mito Uzumaki Namikaze vs Keegan. As the two made their way down to the arena floor, Menma shouted, "Show him what you're made of, Mito." She would have face-palmed at her brother's outburst as if she would give anything less. If not for the fact that she needed to focus on her opponent, she would have told him he was being an idiot. I-8 raised his hand and called, "Begin." As he brought his hand down to signal the start of the match. The two didn't wait for the other to make the first move as they both raced to close the distance and engaged in a rapid-fire set of blows, striking, dodging, parrying, and spinning. Only for the two to split apart as they both went for their next strike. Keegan launched a wave of water shuriken at the redhead, while Mito made a single hand sign before calling, "Wind style. Air bullets." As a barrage of air bullets met the wave of shuriken. Mito was already flashing through another set of hand signs before she launched a wave of shuriken, calling out, "Wind style gale palm." And used a blast of air from her hands to propel the shuriken even faster at her opponent. Keegan saw the incoming attack and made to dodge, but two of the shuriken managed to hit, cutting small gashes in his arm and leg. The cuts, however, weren't debilitating, and he knew it. As he flashed through a quick set of hand signs, calling out, "Water style. Raging waves." As a small torrent of water shot from his mouth. Mito returned fire as she finished her last hand sign. "Wind style. Great breakthrough." And a blast of wind met the oncoming wave of water. Keegan was surprised that this genin was pushing him this much. He already knew he didn't need to win this fight since he and Imran were both really Jounin and only here as FKS handlers. However, this allowed for an opening for Mito to strike, and he decided to let the blow land only for it to be followed up by several others in rapid succession, with the last one sending him into a wall. Playing possum to make it look more realistic that he had gone down. As I-8 called the match, the medics came out onto the arena floor to collect Keegan. As they did, he grinned to himself for his performance. Mito was met with a round of congratulations from her brother and sister, along with those near her team, as she made her way over to them. While this was going on, no one really noticed that Imram and Keegan shared a nod at each other as he was taken away by the medics. The screen once again went through the name selection process, only to select the next set of fighters, Hinata Hyuga versus Neji Hyuga. At this, most of the room went silent as most of the Leaf Ninja in the room knew that this matchup was heavily one-sided. As both competitors stepped onto the arena floor, the tension in the air was so thick it could have been cut with a kunai. As the two now faced each other, Neji spoke. "I never thought that you and I would have to face each other, Hinata." "Nor I, Neji." Hinata responded weakly. At this, Hate spoke. "Begin." Before either one moved, Neji spoke. "Before we do this, a word of advice, withdraw now, Hinata-san. You know you were never cut out to be a ninja. You are too kind and naive. What's more, you actively avoid conflict. You have no faith in yourself, but you couldn't bear to let your teammates down, could you?" At this, Hinata looked down. "I will not hold back in this fight, and you will get hurt. Fate is not on your side, as I will be the one leaving the victor. We can't change who we are or what fate has in store for us, no matter how much we wish it so." At this, Hinata spoke, albeit softly. "You're wrong about why I entered the exams, but maybe I can show you that you're wrong about me." At this, Hinata activated her Byakugan. Looking up to meet Neji's eyes, she took a combat stance. At this, Neji dropped into a similar stance, but not quite the same, before responding, "As you wish, but you cannot win this fight, nor can you change who you are." While this was going up in the balcony, Naruto was seething about Neji's words. The rest of his team had noticed by the way his hand were gripping the railing with such force that his knuckles were all white. In fact, Kunga, Yakumo, Haku, and Ikao all thought they could hear the railing creak slightly. Naruto wanted to jump the rail and pummel Neji into the ground. By his logic, Naruto couldn't have done anything that he had that helped to change his former situation. In fact, by that logic, Naruto should have been helpless to change the way everyone ignored him and never been able to change anything about it. But the fact that Naruto stood here was a contradiction to this. A stark flaw in Neji's way of thinking. Naruto knew that to give up was to admit defeat and give in to despair and slowly wither from the inside out and die a slow death. If you wanted things to change, you had to abandon your fear, your doubt, your hesitation, and turn to face the mountain before you. Never give an inch and advance, never stopping till you make the change that you wanted happen. This was one of the lessons he had learned when he was with the wolves. It was also one of the most important. For just a second, Naruto's and Hinata's eyes met. They both shared a quick nod. Neji noticed this and looked at where Hinata's eyes were looking and found Naruto glaring at him with an intensity that would have bored right through him and made anyone else among the Leaf Genin in the room look away. Naruto had trained with Hinata back when they were in the academy. This was where Naruto had encouraged Hinata to reach for her own goal and to get stronger her own way. This had led to Hinata coming up with her own way to fight. Neji's eyes refocused on Hinata and he activated his Byakugan, and with that the fight began. The two Hyuga locked in a deadly dance of the gentle fist style that the members of their clan favored. However, Hinata was moving different from the way Neji moved. While his strikes were rigid, precise, Hinata's were more fluid and graceful, allowing for her to bend and weave. The pair went at it without any hesitation. Neji noticed that Hinata had indeed gotten better, but something was different about her strikes. As one of the strikes managed to land but not on a chakra point, Neji felt a jolt of electricity run up his left arm, causing it go numb. Neji's eyes widened as he disengaged for a moment as he looked to his arm, then back to Hinata. "If you want to know what you're feeling, it's the effect of my lightning chakra nature added to my strikes," Hinata stated, surprising everyone including her father who had come to see the matches, and if his daughter had managed to get any stronger. "By combining a chakra nature change to my strikes, they become more potent." This info made Neji scowl. This will be a problem, he thought as the feeling was coming back to his arm, albeit slowly. As the fight continued on, Hinata surprised Neji again with a strike aimed at his head as she called out, 8 trigrams vacuum palm. Neji's eye widened, but he managed to avoid the blast of compressed air aimed at his head and aimed a counter-strike. At this, Hinata disengaged by performing a backflip to make some space as she gathered herself into her stance once more, only to have her opponent rush her. This made her smirk as her cousin ran headfirst into the trap she had set for him. As Neji closed in, she made a hand seal, and 2 clones now stood next to Hinata and charged. Neji saw through her ploy and took down both of the clones. As the real Hinata struck, Neji smirked as he used his rotation to block the incoming attack and knock her back. Only to realize that he had made a misstep as the Hinata he struck dissipated and the real Hinata was coming directly at him just as his rotation was ending. Hinata managed to come up inside his guard as the rotation finished and land a palm heel strike to his right shoulder, making his right arm useless for a short bit of time thanks to her chakra nature infused strikes. As the fight continued, it seemed that Hinata could win if not for the fact that Neji had managed to close the gap and hit his with 8 trigrams 64 palms, which caused her to take a large amount of damage. When Neji went in to finish her, Hinata surprised him as she struck. Protective 8 trigrams 64 palms. At this razor-thin blades of pure chakra sliced through the air, almost causing severe harm to Niji, if not for the fact that he was able to use his rotation at the last second to protect himself. The last of her chakra gone, Hinata fell to the ground, passed out from the exhaustion and damage to her chakra network. At this Hayate called the match, however, Niji couldn't help but stare for just a moment at the unconscious form of Hinata as she was taken off the arena floor, as he thought to himself. Well, it seems that you have indeed changed Hinata and even become stronger than I thought possible. And it seems you have him to thank for that. As Niji knew that Naruto had to have helped her train. But in the end it ended up the same way I said it would. As that thought passed through his mind, he turned and walked off the floor and back to his team. At the same time, Hiashi was still staring after his daughter as she was taken off the field. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have never thought Hinata could have grown so much as to almost defeat Niji, and yet he couldn't help but feel something was off. Where has she learned to combine her chakra nature with her strikes? And more importantly, who had taught her this, and why? He knew that no Hikage had taught her this. Then it suddenly clicked when Niji had looked into the balcony. The boy who had glared at him. The eldest son of the Hokage had been glaring at him like he was ready to beat him to a pulp. He had been the one to help train his daughter, he was sure of it. One thing was for certain, he would need to talk to Hinata when all was said and done. The board started to spin through names again and finally landed on the next set of names to fight in the arena. Sai vs Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze. At this, both of the competitors made their way down to the arena floor. Or that would have been what happened if not for the fact that Sai raised his hand and called out, "Proctor, I'd like to forfeit." This caused most of the onlookers in the balcony to stare at him in confusion. Well, Naramis' outburst drew their attention next. "Oh no, you don't. I entered this exam to prove I have what it takes to be a Jounin. Don't you dare back out." Ryuichi looked over to Sai, confused as well. "Sai, what are you doing?" he asked his student, puzzled at Sai's actions, yet his expression didn't seem to faze Sai as he gave the same fake smile as always. "Sorry sensei, but to be honest, I'm pretty sure I am not strong enough to beat her." At this, Ryuichi blinked but nodded and gave confirmation to Hayate. "The winner by forfeit is Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze." At this, Narumi started complaining about how her opponent was a coward and it wasn't fair that she won like this. At this, the rest of the room sweat dropped at the girl antics. Ryuichi, however, wondered if this was just Sai being Sai or if he really did think that he would have lost the fight and decided to withdraw instead of fighting a losing battle. This showed good judgment if it was the latter. And if that was true, it also showed that out of all three of his students, Sai was the most ready for this exam. After that, the screen whirled through names once more, Narumi fuming next to her brother and sister as the screen stopped on the next two combatants, Setsuna Uchiha vs Kinya Futomi, as both Kunoichi made their way to the arena. The grass ninja looked Setsuna up and down only to raise an eyebrow. "From what I know of the Uchiha, I would have thought you would be more imposing." This comment made Setsuna glare at her opponent before responding, "Don't worry, when I wipe the floor with you, it won't make a difference how imposing I look." Hayate spoke up before any more trash talk was hurled. "Begin." The two rushed each other, however. Setsuna had the upper hand in this fight as her Sharingan flared to life. The two exchanged a series of strikes before Setsuna flashed through a series of hand signs as she called, "Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu." But that she fired off a barrage of small fireballs at her opponent. The grass ninja dodged and weaved only to fire back with a barrage of kunai. Setsuna rolled out of the way and came up to her feet. Kinya smiled as she squared her stance, ninja art. Needle senbon. Her long hair came to life and shot forth a deadly rain of razor-sharpened hair needles. Setsuna planted her feet and wove through a set of hand signs. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. At this, a large fireball shot from her lips and incinerated the incoming projectiles as it headed straight for Kinya. Only for her to roll out of the way of the oncoming ball of flame. When she came up on her feet, Kinya leant forward now on all fours. Needle spear. Adachi. She cried as her hair turned into long spears that shot forward to impale Setsuna. The young Uchiha wove through the oncoming spears trying to close with her opponent. As she did, her opponent ran through a set of hand signs. Ninja art. Needle Jizo. Suddenly her long hair wrapped around her body and seemed to turn ridged and sharp, almost like she was wrapped in a cloak of metallic spikes. Setsuna was surprised by the jutsu. However, she also knew that while this jutsu was strong, it had weak points since it cold covered the entire body. With her Sharingan active, she was able to analyze the jutsu and what its weakness was. With one well-placed strike, Setsuna managed to strike the unprotected part of her opponent's face, which was one of the only spots that the Needle Jizo couldn't protect fully. This caused her opponent's jutsu to dissipate as her hair went back to normal as she was sent back a few feet by the force of her blow. Kinya managed to land on her feet only for Setsuna to be on her in an instant with a kunai drawn and poised to cut her throat. "Yield" was the only word to come from her opponent's mouth as Kinya had no other course of action. "I submit," she answered quietly but loud enough for the proctor to hear. Winner Satsuna Chiha. Hayate announced as she made her way back to the balcony and to the rest of her team. While this happened, the screen went through the process of selection again. Before it once again settled on the next pair of combatants, Kunga Uzumaki Namikaze vs Jura. And once again Hayate called for the two competitors to make their way to the arena floor. For his part, Jura was slightly taller than most genin by about half a foot or more. Similar to Jugo in appearance, with orange hair, dressed in a grayish-white and red trimmed vest with a fishnet undershirt and black pants with matching black arm bracers. The two now facing each other, Hayate called begin. But that the fight was on as Jura brought his hands up to form a single hand sign, and a small flood of stone came pouring from his mouth to form a stone golem that charged alongside him at Kunga full speed. With a quick set of hand signs, Kunga fired off his jutsu, lightning style. Lightning Hound. As the beast leapt forward in a blur, headed straight for Jura, only to be intercepted by Jura's golem, which was blasted into pieces. As Jura burst through the dust left by the golem and struck. The two met with a quick exchange of blows, only to switch sides from where they were originally. Jura shot through a set of hand signs before slamming his hands down on the ground, earth style. Rupturing earth palm. At this, the stone in front of him ruptured and split, heading straight for his opponent. Kunga jumped out of the way to avoid the attack, only to find out that it was a feint as Jura closed a gap and landed a hit that sent Kunga back a few feet with the force of the hit. He winced as he got back to his feet. Jura's strength was nothing to sneeze at. He knew he would be feeling the full extent of that hit, plus the bruises later. Gritting his teeth, he brought his hands up into a single hand sign. Making a threesome of shadow clones, Kunga rushed his opponent as they closed. All four Kungas flashed through the same set of hand signs. Water style. Raging waves. As these words finished, 4 torrents of water shot forth, impacting his opponent, or they would have if not for the fast thinking his opponent showed as Jura simply slammed his hand into the ground. But the cry of earth style. Terra shield. A section of the floor flipped up like it was on springs to block the incoming torrent. Once the water had stopped, the earth shield fell back into place to allow Jura to charge. With a single hand sign, both of Jura's hands seemed to turn to stone as the skin turned a dark brown as both fists came forward. Earth style. Iron skin. Without skipping a beat, Jura took out all 3 clones without even slowing his charge. Kunga gulped slightly at both the sight and the memory of how hard his clones had been hit. The memory felt like a boulder hit him at high speed. Managing to dodge the oncoming attack of his opponent as Jura's fist crashed through the spot he had been standing just a second ago and into the ground, burying themselves up to the elbow. With only seconds to spare, Kunga flashed through hand signs, the last one finishing as Jura pulled his arms free. Bringing his hands down, Kunga called, lightning style. Spider web, and with that a web of electricity spread out, ensnaring Jura in its reach since he was too close to get out of the way in time. But the violent jolt of concentrated electricity coursing through his body, Jura toppled to the ground, a groan escaping his lips as his eyes rolled back in his head. At this, Hayate spoke up, winner Kunga Uzumaki Namikaze. Kunga made his way back to the balcony and his team, only to be greeted with high fives and nice jobs. Ikao smiled at him as she told him, good job in there. Minato motioned for a few of the Jounin to mend the ruined arena floor. After that, the screen whirled to life again as the selection process started once more. Only to stop on the next 2 names to do battle, Yakumo Kurama vs Imram. When this happened, Ikao smiled at this and placed a hand on her shoulder as she gave her student her support. Show him what you're made of out there. This bolstered Yakumo's confidence as she headed for the arena floor. Her sensei was right, all the missions and training had led her to this moment, and she would exit this arena without knowing she had done her best. Soon both were standing in front of each other on the arena floor, and once again Hayate called begin. And with that one word, the match was on as the two sprang into action, both jumping back to make room for what they had planned. Imram pulled out a single shuriken and threw it at Yakumo. Without a second to waste, he brought his hands up and flashed through a set of hand signs, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. And with that, the single shuriken multiplied to about 30 as the now wave of shuriken fast approached Yakumo. Dodging out of the way, Yakumo wove a set of hand signs before calling out. Lightning illusion. Flash pillar. At this, Yakumo's body lit up like she had just been struck by a bolt of lightning as the light intensified to blinding as most of the room had to shield their eyes. When the light finally subsided, Yakumo was gone. Imram ducked the strike from behind and grabbed Yakumo's arm, and with one move he brought her to the ground, pinned on her back. Thinking he had the match won, he ready to strike only for Yakumo to fade as a kick struck him in the face, sending him backwards, though he managed to come out of the tumble in a crouch. Yakumo was standing where he had been a moment ago in a ready position only for Imram to snort. Should have known Jinjutsu, after all the Kurama clan is well known for it. He said, smirking. Too bad it's only useful when your opponent is least expecting it. Yakumo simply smiled before replying, well, aren't you well informed? However, I have more at my disposal than just Jinjutsu. With that said, electricity sparked along her body as it looked more like she had just become a living spark plug. As she raced forward faster than she had before, closing the distance in a second. She struck fast as Imram tried to dodge, only to be just a bit too slow. As her strike hit, it cut her opponent, leaving a nice gash along his shoulder blade. Managing to make some space, Imram sped through a set of hand signs before opening his mouth, water style. Severing wave. At this, Yakumo dodged a blast stream of water as she weaved around it. To come within striking distance as she struck and hit Imram in the chest. Even though it was a glancing blow, the electricity sparking along her body managed to cut a shallow line on his chest. Flashing through another set of hand signs, Yakumo jumped back and drew her tantum from its sheath as the electricity faded and she began to wave her blade back and forth. Imram was about to laugh, only to stop as words seemed to echo through his mind: leaf ninja art. Yanagi. As the waving blade seemed to multiply with this, they resembled a willow branch swaying in the breeze. The leaves on the branch blew off and came at him as they passed. He felt himself be sliced by each leaf as it touched his skin. As this happened, he made to dispel the genjutsu, only to find that Yakumo now stood with her blade poised to take his eye. Not only that, but he was somehow covered in cuts and gashes, even though Yakumo was seen by those in the balcony to have not laid a finger on him. At this, Imram questioned, how? Before he was forced to surrender. Winner Yakumo Kurama. At this, the medics came and helped Imram off the arena floor while Yakumo headed back to the balconies. As she made it back, Yakumo was greeted with smiles, as well as several great jobs. Ikgao stepped up and congratulated her student. "See, told you, you could do it." Finishing the statement, she winked at Yakumo like they were sharing some inside joke, and she could only smile wider at the gesture. Once again the screen flashed through names and again selected the next set of opponents. Gaara vs Rock Lee. At this, Lee went into one of his rants about how his supposed plan worked to be the next one selected to fight, before he and Guy shared a moment that caused most of the room to think they were either going insane or going to go blind as Lee and Guy performed their true ultimate genjutsu. Guy and Lee were having a master-student moment where they were both shouting youth. From the top of a cliff overlooking the ocean, with a sunrise occurring behind them as the kanji for youth appeared in bold above the two of them. Aku was questioning reality, while Yakumo was constantly trying to exert her abilities to dispel the nightmare-like genjutsu. Naruto, however, in his curiosity, grabbed one of the rocks from the cliffside and then tossed it over the edge. As a result, it went into the water below. What kind of sick genjutsu is this? They never did this when I was part of one of their training sessions. Naruto couldn't help but think. At this, Ku cried out, "Turn it off. I don't want this burned into my memory." Naruto turned and looked to his brother, who on second glance seemed to be frozen in place. "Hey bro, you okay?" he said, waving a hand in front of Kunga only for him to respond, "I think I'm blind." Minato, however, shrugged as he shook his head at the display. He had seen it enough times already between Might Guy and Gay's father. It was too late for him. Meanwhile, Sakura walked over to them from where she had been standing before decking them both as she yelled, "Can you not mentally scar us with that, damn it?" After Sakura had finished scolding the pair, Lee jumped the railing and landed to face his opponent, who had been waiting for him without moving. Before Hayate could even start the match, the cork on the gourd fired at high speed to strike Lee, only to be caught by his hand in a blur before it impacted. "Why so eager to start before the match has even begun?" Lee questioned, dropping the cork. Finally, Hayate called for the match to begin and Lee took off toward his opponent. At first, Lee wasn't able to land a clean hit on Gaara, as his sand was acting as a shield that protected him from all of Lee's attacks, no matter how fast or what angle that it came from. When his standard attacks proved unable to bypass Gaara's defenses, Lee was unsure he would even be able to hit him. However, at this, Guy called out from the stands, "Lee, now is the time for you to do it." "But Guy-sensei, you said it was only to be used when lives were on the line." "That I did, but this is an exception," Guy said, flashing his trademark smile which could blind an unsuspecting person from more than 20 feet away. At this, Lee smiled and removed the leg weights had been wearing. Most of the people in the room scoffed at this pointless gesture, only for their mouths to drop when the weights hit the ground and caused a pair of craters upon impact. The amount of dust that had been kicked up made it look like a batch of explosive tags had gone off. With his ankle weights removed, his speed increased so much that he managed to actually hit Gaara, finishing off his strikes with a lotus technique. Gaara was now laying in a crater of his own as Hayate approached to check on his well-being. However, Gaara suddenly seemed to be breaking apart as his whole body turned into sand as the real Gaara came up behind Lee and began to strike with blasts of high-speed sand repeatedly. "Lee, you need to get out of there," Sakura yelled from the balcony, only for Ryuichi to step up next to her. "That won't work," he said, causing Sakura to turn and look at him. "Oh, why is that?" Sakura asked, only for Kakashi to step up next to her from the other side and pick up where her sensei left off. "It's due to the fact that the lotus is what you might call a double-edged sword." "What does that mean?" she again questioned, showing just how little she knew about what was going on. "You know that it's a forbidden technique, why do you think that is?" Ryuichi asked, using this moment to teach his student just how far behind she was. Well, she spoke up but trailed off as she had no good answer. It's due to the fact that it's neither ninjutsu nor jinjutsu but taijutsu that places enormous strain on the user's body. So much so that the strain is almost unimaginable. Right now, Lee can barely move at all. He finished. If that's true, then that means he is a sitting duck right now. Right, sensei? Mito questioned, showing that she had been listening to what they had been discussing. Right. At this moment, Hess in so much physical pain at anyone's guess how Hess still standing, let alone moving. Kakashi stated. As the match went on, Lee decided it was time to use his ace in the hole. At this, Lee took a ready stance as he smiled and dodged attacks, causing many in the stands to be stunned. Sakura couldn't believe it as she watched it happen, Hess smiling. Hess running for his life, and Hess smiling. Yes, but now it's Gaara's turn to run as the Leaf Village Lotus blooms twice. Guy stated calmly. Lee told me that before. What does it mean? She questioned as this made both Ryuichi and Kakashi pause before Kakashi spoke up, stunned at what Guy just admitted to. You didn't? At this, Guy shot back, yes I did, and don't think I don't know the consequence of what could happen. So that boy is able to open the 8 inner gates and use the hidden lotus. If that isn't, pausing to regain his composure before asking his question, okay, so how many gates can he open now? 5. Guy stated. Wait a sec, if a primary lotus puts that much strain on the body, what would happen if he went farther? Mito questioned. Exactly. Kakashi responded to his surrogate little sister, there are 8 gates, think of them as chakra limiters, by opening them you can surpass the body's natural limits and safeguards. The primary lotus opens only the first of these gates. When you open the 3rd gate you enter the hidden lotus. When all 8 gates are open you could gain power to rival even that of the Hokage, but the catch is that in the end you die. This caused both girls to gasp at what they had just learned. Using this technique, Lee opened up to the 6th gate and was able to stage a comeback against Gaara. The sand that had been protecting him wasn't able to keep up with Lee's insane speed, actually managing to cause damage to Gaara, who could barely keep up. But the final strike of his hidden lotus, Gaara was sent plummeting at high speed into the ground. However, by turning his gourd to sand to cushion his impact, he managed to survive the impact. The problem for Lee was that technique took a massive toll on his body to the point that he could barely crawl away. Gaara added to Lee's injury by using his sand coffin to crush Lee's arm and leg. Before this could go any further, Guy intervened and stopped Gaara from killing him. This action caused Gaara to pause as his thoughts came to a grinding halt before asking, but why? He failed, so why save him? Because Hess my student. At this, Gaara got back to his feet, albeit slower than he would have liked, and made his way off the arena floor. He spoke. I quit. He didn't do anything to help to acknowledge my existence. This statement stunned the rest of the room, but it was too late. When Guy had stepped in to save Lee, the match had been decided. As he walked off the floor he looked up at Naruto and his eyes narrowed at him, then widened in a dark glee. He will help to acknowledge my existence. Once the two were off the arena floor, Minato motioned for a few of the Jounin to mend the ruined arena again, using a collaboration Earth-style jutsu to fix the damage to the floor. After they had finished fixing the floor, the screen spun up once more to select the next 2 names to fight. Menma, Uzumaki Namikaze vs. Tadasu. At this pairing, Menma whooped about how he was going to mop the floor with his opponent, only for Mito to hit him on the head. Don't you dare go and claim this is going to be easy, this is the Jounin for a reason. She ranted at him, making Menma apologize before he entered the ring. While his opponent made his way down without much drama. The two sized each other up as they stood face to face. Looking his opponent over, Tadasu was taller with brown hair and brown eyes and a black bandana-style hit-ia, dressed in a grey vest with a black shirt underneath and tan shinobi pants. At this, Hade announced begin. But that both combatants burst into motion, hoping to strike the first blow as they both flashed through a set of hand signs. As if looking at a reflection, both fighters finished at the same time with a call of fire style. Fireball jutsu. As twin blasts of flame collided with each other. When the flames cleared, both had a look of stunned confusion on their faces. Is he copying me? Menma questioned in his mind. Before this thought could get any traction, his opponent made his next move. Tadasu flashed through another set of hand signs, fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu. At this, he fired off several smaller but no less dangerous flaming spheres. Grinning, Menma wove and dodged through the fireballs as he went through a set of hand signs himself, fire style bullet. Homura. And brought his hand up and fired a decent sized column of flame from his hand at his opponent. Tadasu managed to have a clone take the hit. Menma decided too could play that game as he summoned a trio of his own clones who moved to surround his opponent. Menma smirked as he moved to enact his plan as he and his clones went through a familiar set of hand signs, fire style. Fireball jutsu. And with that, 3 simultaneous blasts of fire now converged on their target. Tadasu backflipped to get out of the way, but was still singed in several places as he went through a new set of hand signs. Fire style. Flaming meteors. At this Tadasu made a myriad of small fireballs that streaked for Menma and his clones, taking out the pair of clones, while Menma managed to dodge and weave his way through the fireballs to get in closer, but not without getting singed himself in several places. When he got within range, Menma conjured 7 shadow clones and rushed his opponent full speed, mobbing him with numbers and the Uzumaki-style Taijutsu. Winner Menma Uzumaki Namikaze. Menma pumped his fist in the air as he made his way back to the balcony, stating that he was the man, only for Kakashi to roll his eye at this statement. While this was happening, the screen went thought the process of picking names again, but with only 4 people left who had not fought, it was not much guess of the pairings since there was only 2 possible outcomes. As the screen finally settled on an outcome. Haku Mamachi vs. Hineko Yazuka. A8 called for the 2 fighters to make their way to the floor. When both opponents were present, he motioned for them to begin the fight, however it didn't last long as Haku used her hit and miss jutsu to reduce her opponent's visibility and make it harder to retaliate. When the mist cleared, her opponent was riddled with senbon and was down on one knee. At this point, A8 called it as anything more would be unnecessary to see that Haku had won the fight. Menma could be heard complaining that they hadn't even seen any action at this. Naruto just cited his brother's outburst while Mito facepalmed. The last match was Choji vs. Dosu. At this, Naruto heard Choji talk about how he was totally out of his league, however Asuma told Choji that he would take him out for all-you-could-eat barbecue if he won. At this, Choji shouted that he would win and that he would be feasting when all was said and done as he entered the ring. Naruto waited for Choji to be out of range before he spoke up. That was a bit of a cheap shot, don't you think, Asuma-sensei? Naruto asked accusingly. At this, the Jounin just chuckled lightly and scratched the back of his head. Well, I didn't really force him to do anything, he made his own choice after all. Some choice, since you knew Choji would never turn down free all-you-can-eat barbecue. Shikamaru remarked, causing Asuma to face vault at this. The match, however, was over faster than any of the other matches, since it was a bad matchup to begin with, since Choji's opponent could strike using sound, even if his opponent's ears were covered like the human body was one giant ear. With a single strike the match was over. Winner Dosu. Hayate announced. As the sound ninja made his way back to the balcony. When this announcement was finished, Minato stepped forward to address those who had moved on to the final round of the exam. You have all demonstrated great talent here today and have moved on to the 3rd round of the exam. The 3rd round will be held 1 month from now. However, we will be drawing for who you will be battling in the finals now. At this, many of the participants were confused. However, Minato spoke before any questions could be asked. This may seem strange, but it is to allow for those who have shown their full skill set to improve and acquire new jutsu. This also makes it so that no one can take advantage of any information gained here today. So please, come forward and draw. Minato said, as he gestured towards a box with the names of all those present in it. One by one, they approached the box and drew. Finally, the pairing were complete. In order, it was as followed. Narumi vs Niji, Temari vs Shikamaru, Shino vs Kankurm, Mito vs Ikumo, Sasuke vs Menma, Ino vs Haku, Satsuna vs Dosu, Mito vs Ikumo, FK vs Kunga, Naruto vs Gaara. With that, Hayate addressed those present one last time. Use this time well to prepare, both mentally and physically dismissed. You really should have told them that from the start, and 2, you need to get some new material, dude, this intro is getting old. Wait, Naruto, how did you get in here? Hello, Ninja did. The atmosphere in the Uzumaki Namikaze estate was a happy one as Kushina hugged her 5 kids with all the strength and happiness she could muster, even though Naruto was a bit stiff in returning the hug. Don't get the wrong idea, he had almost gotten to about maybe 40% in the family issue resolution department. Hey, don't knock it, that is way more than what it used to be. But he still wasn't ready to be all touchy-feely or fully open with most of his family yet. At this, Narumi spoke up from among her siblings. Mom, easy, if you squeeze any harder and y'all crush us. She managed to squeak out before Kushina pulled back a bit. Oh, I'm just so proud of you all. Kushina said before returning to squeezing them in her tight embrace. Stop it, you're killing us. Narumi piped up again. When Kushina finally did let go of them, Naruto spoke up. You know, this isn't really all that noteworthy, right? I mean, we still have the 3rd part of the exam to pass. Minato spoke up at this comment. This may not seem like much, but it is still a reason to be proud, you all performed wonderfully out there. At this, Narumi fed since she never got to fight in the preliminaries. This caused those who were in the room to laugh at the young girl's reaction, while Naruto only smirked slightly. He knew how much his sister had wanted to fight, so she could show just how far she had come. Alright, let's go out and celebrate. Jiraiya cheered. Yeah. Tsunade cheered, ready to party. Orochimaru couldn't help but sigh and shake his head slightly, but he was used to it by now, since he had been on the same team as these two, but he had to admit their attitude was if nothing else a bit contagious, as he tried to hide his smirk. Minato smiled at the antics of his former sensei and his teammates. While he himself would be the first to suggest that they celebrate, he also knew that the third part of the exam was going to be the hardest one. Since none of his children liked to lose, not to mention that they all seemed to have inherited Kushina's competitive nature to boot. All he could think was, this is going to be one heck of a final exam. As they were about to leave, Naruto asked if Haku was allowed to come with them as well, since she had no one in the way of family to celebrate with. Kushina just smiled at her son as she responded, of course she can. At this, Naruto smiled and raced off go get Haku. Meeting the family at the Yakiniku-Q, since the three sages managed to convince Minato that going to Ichiraku Ramen every time they went out for dinner and or to get food was overkill. To which Minato conceded the point. 20 minutes later, the family plus Haku was eating and having an all-around good time for the most part. Also running into Team 10 was fun, since Asuma ended up having to pay up on the barbecue offered up, since both Shikamaru and Ino made it to the final round of the Chunin exams, plus he felt bad for how he had gotten Choji into the arena when he was outclassed by his opponent. After he saw the bill, however, he didn't feel like it was such a good idea, and his wallet was going to be feeling it for some time to come. When all was said and done, the family went home after saying goodbye to Team 10 and dropping Haku off at her new apartment. They were about to call it a night before Mito pointed out one very important fact. Wait, we need to pick who we want to train with for the final round. At this statement, both Menma and Narumi agreed with a spoken, hey, that's right. At this, the room became serious as Minato posed the question, alright, which one of us would you like to train under, kids? Just remember, there won't be any switching or complaining allowed once you've chosen your sensei for the month. Minato explained, getting excited reactions from his children. At this, Mito spoke up, Orochi-oji, please train me for the month. Taking first pick, Orochimaru couldn't help but smile as he replied. I look forward to our time together, be ready though when I'm done with you, the others won't know what hit them. Next to step forward was Menma as he asked, hey. Jiraiya-oji, y'all make me stronger, then Tusen, right? Menma asked his godfather. At this, Jiraiya answered with a hearty laugh before responding. Heh. What do you take me for, Menma? I am Jiraiya, the great toad sage of Mount Mamboku. The sensei of the 4th Hokage. This statement caused Kushina, Shizune and Tsunade to sigh at his boasting, while Minato just chuckled slightly at his sensei's antics. When the groaning was over, Narumi stepped up. Tsunade-bachan. Could you please teach me this month? Narumi asked, employing her puppy dog eyes jutsu. Of course, Rumi-chan. Once I'm done training you, I'm going all in on you winning the finals. Tsunade said with her eyes burning in determination as Narumi just laughed at her godmother's actions, as everyone else chuckled wryly, knowing how her luck normally went. After this, Kunga was next to speak on who he wanted to train with. Kachan, would you train me for the finals? He asked. At this, Kushina smiled as she replied. Well, show them wo's boss when all is said and done. This statement made Kunga chuckle as he knew that his mother's competitive side was showing. Well, Naruto, what do you say if you and I? Before he could finish his statement, Naruto held up a hand to interrupt his father. If it's all the same to you, I would like to ask if I would be allowed to have access to training ground 44 for the month to train. At this request, everyone in the room turned their attention to Naruto, while Minato deflated slightly before trying one more time at getting Naruto to train with him. Naruto, I can train you if you'd like, or I can get Kakashi to. Again, Naruto raised his hand before speaking up. Well, I appreciate the offer more than you know I can't accept. However, if you could approve my request, I would greatly appreciate it. Naruto said as Minato gave him a sad smile. Nodding to him, he relented, okay, I will let Ikao know where you are training along with Anko, so that they both don't freak out for different reasons. Just be careful in there, okay, and come back safe. Minato said, concern in his voice. I will, and don't worry, I will be back in time for the finals. Naruto stated, smiling. XXXX. 2 weeks have passed since then, and the training of the young shinobi was not slowing down one bit. Minato was sitting at his desk, having managed to get his greatest faux paperwork under control for the time being. He took a rare moment to think about how things were going with his kids' training. As his thoughts jumped to this and that about what each of his children were doing, they finally settled on Naruto. Wondering what he could be doing in training ground 44 right now that would be able to help him more than training with himself or Kakashi. From what Anko had said in her report, she couldn't figure out where he was in the forest, and she had combed the whole thing. Yet it was as if he left no trail to follow, no tracks, not even a bent branch to note his passing. It was as if he just vanished or blended into the forest, as if he were one with it like a chameleon. Maybe Hess using a natural cave or some sort of hidden area like when he ran away. As this idea rolled through his mind, he also remembered that Naruto had hid for 4 years in there and Anko couldn't find him the first time around with an army of other ninja to help search. Did he really expect a different result this time? Minato's thoughts then shifted to what had been dropped on his doorstep, so to speak. He still couldn't believe it, and it had been over 2 weeks now since he had been summoned to training ground 44 by Anko during the second part of the exam, along with his wife. He had gone thinking that something terrible had happened or that one of his kids had died or been grievously injured to the point that they would never be able to be a ninja again. But what he had found was something completely different. Flashback start. Minato would normally be about knee-deep in paperwork right about now, if not for the fact that an Anbu who had been stationed at training ground 44 had shown up at his office, telling him that he needed to come at once along with Kushina at the request of Anko. So here he was heading back to the same place that seemed to have become a permanent part of his family's life, as well as giving him more than one headache for quite some time now. He almost dreaded coming, but when he and Kushina both arrived, Anko was waiting with 2 other Anbu and a bound red-haired girl with glasses and wearing a grass village hit I-8. Minato simply arched a brow at the proctor of the second exam, only for her to glance at the girl who was sitting on a stump with her wrists tied behind her back. Minato was about to speak, but the girl spoke up, beating him to it. "They are the leaders of the Uzumaki clan?" the red-headed girl questioned bluntly. It was Kushina who stepped forward at this question. "That would technically be me if you are asking about the Uzumaki, since my husband is the last member of the Namikaze clan." "Wait, you are the head of the clan?" the redhead asked, slightly shocked that this plain-looking woman was the head of her family's clan. "Yes, I'm actually the last living main house family member of the Uzumaki clan, not counting my children, and from what I am aware of last living descendant of Ashina Uzumaki himself," Kushina replied, making the girl gape at that. Even Anko and the 2 Anbu members were shocked by this info. To think that the wife of the Hokage was related to the former head of the once great Whirlpool nation was something they were not expecting, to say the least. Regaining her composure, Karen finally introduced herself. "My name is Karen, and if the information I have been told is right, then my mother and you are related somehow, so that means that you and I are related." At this, both Minato and Kushina were a bit surprised, but it wasn't unthinkable that there weren't some remnants, if however small, of the Uzumaki clan left who had escaped the destruction of the hidden whirlpool. "I think this is something that we should discuss in private," Minato said as he dismissed the 2 Anbu and signaled for Anko to follow as they took the girl, now known as Karen, back to the Hokage tower so they could talk in a more private location. Flashback end. Who would have guessed that this exam would cause so much commotion? First with the turning up of a possible unknown Uzumaki relative, and then with a bet that was now going on between the whole of the adults in the Uzumaki Namikaze household. Things seemed like they were just getting crazier by the day. Flashback start. "Say what?" Tsunade shouted, clearly not amused by what Jiraiya was proposing. "That's right, Tsunade. Menma vs Narumi, winner take all. If Menma wins the tournament, I get my long-awaited date with you. If you and Narumi-chan win, he'll pay off all the debt that you owe and pay it all back to you," Jiraiya said with a confident smirk on his face. Tsunade couldn't believe what she was hearing. Never before had such a golden opportunity made its way to her. If Narumi managed to win this, then her life would be set. Her debt would be wiped clean and she'd get every single Ryo back to boot. The only obstacle that stood in her way was her perverted teammate and her godson Menma. Cracking a somewhat manic smile, Tsunade's eyes burned with determination as she held out her hand. "Ha! And people say I'm a sucker, you got a deal, Jiraiya. You had better start emptying your savings because I'm definitely not losing this one," Tsunade shouted as Jiraiya cracked a smile of his own, albeit a little perverted, as he reached to meet her hand with his. But before they could shake on it, the other people in the room cleared their throats. "Aren't you two forgetting a few people?" Kushina said with a slight glare, making Jiraiya shrink back slightly as Tsunade winced a bit, knowing firsthand what that look meant and what it could lead to. "I agree, it wouldn't be fair for just the 2 of you to make such a high-stakes wager," Orochimaru said, his eyes narrowed at his teammates' lack of inclusion on the event. Though he didn't show it, Orochimaru did enjoy the idea of making the final part of the exam a bit more interesting, though he'd never admitted openly he was a bit of a gambling man himself when it suited him. This bet in particular caught his attention, seeing as it was on his godchildren. He wasn't going to accept being left out on such an interesting and exciting wager. "I have to agree, Sensei, Tsunade, if you want to bet on the finals, all of us should be a part of it since it concerns all of us," Minato said as his eyes burned with the same determination that they had. Seeing the expecting looks, or slightly annoyed ones in the case of Kushina and Orochimaru, the 2 sighed before they relented, knowing that they weren't getting out of this one. Changing the stakes of the bet to suit each person depending on who the winner was and what the losers would pay up was quite difficult, though they managed to make do. All that was left was to pick who they were betting on. "Alright, so now it's time to place your bets on who you think will win." Kakashi said, as he readied a pen and notebook to record the bets. I'm sticking with Menma. By the time I'm done with him, he'll be unstoppable. Jiraiya confidently said, his eyes burning with confidence. HMPH. I'm sticking with Rumi-chan as well, it'll make her strong enough to smash through everyone. Tsunade said, making everyone laugh wryly knowing that she was probably giving Narumi the knowledge behind her monster-like strength. I'm going with Kunga. I'm in charge of his training so it'll make sure that he wins. Kushina said as her eyes sparkled brightly. As for myself I will be placing my bet on Mito-chan. She's the most balanced out of all the siblings. Orochimaru said, placing his hand on his chin. And with me as her teacher she will have no problems winning. This statement made the others in the room stare at him. Orochimaru wasn't one to normally make such boasts, that was Jiraiya's job. I'm going to place my bet on Naruto. Minato said with conviction as the others blinked in confusion as they turned to the blonde. Really? Naru-chan? Kushina said, thinking that it was an interesting bet since they hadn't seen what Naruto could fully do yet. That's an interesting gamble, Minato. Tsunade said, as her thoughts turned to her enigmatic godson. He was definitely the dark horse in this race. However, she couldn't deny that Naruto had not only made it through the first two parts of the exam, but had also made it through the preliminary phase, having defeated one of the top rookies from his class. She had never really seen him in action until then, since most of the time she only saw him when he came in for his regular checkup or when he had a serious injury. But still he was definitely someone to watch closely. But we don't really know where he stands in terms of skill, Minato. Sure, has shown great potential, but what if his win in the preliminaries was a fluke? From what we know of his training or lack thereof and have seen of him in the academy, he's about as average as they get. In terms of skill the rest of his siblings are way ahead of him. Though we're mostly to blame for that. He said, taking a moment to mentally kick himself over it for the 100th time. Are you sure you still want to take that risk? Jiraiya asked in a worried tone. I know that, Jiraiya-sensei, but it's not going to change my mind. I'm going to put my faith in him. Minato said, his confidence showing much more than they have seen in the past. After what I have heard from his sensei and the abilities he has shown here and there, to be honest, I think Naruto is the best bet to make. HMPH, we'll see how far your faith takes you then, Minato. Tsunade said with a small smirk on her face, though she knew it was wrong of her to think, she was almost certain that he was making a mistake by betting on the boy. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that Naruto hadn't even shown them what he was truly capable of. And who knows, if Naruto really is the sleeper that you seem to think he is, we may just get to see what he truly is capable of. Jiraiya couldn't help but shake his head at the notion. Sure, the kid was fast according to the reports that Ikao gave, and he had seemed to have picked up a few very impressive tricks like his summon contract, but that could be evened out in more ways than one. Even though it seemed he was able to access the fox's chakra, it didn't help much as it had the potential to do more harm than good. The chakra cloak was a double-edged sword at its best. From what he learned from Kushina, the cloak was able to give the user a power boost, but if the user couldn't control it, the cloak would cause them to go into a feral state. At which point the match would be stopped and Naruto subdued by the ninja in the area, plus the chakra was corrosive, or so he had been told, to the point that it would cause harm to the user even if they healed at an accelerated rate. All in all, what Naruto had managed to gain in the way of abilities, while impressive, meant nothing if his opponents were on a whole other level skill-wise to begin with. Seeing that everyone had made their bets, though Kushina looked torn, Kakashi quickly jotted down names, along with the ones that they believed would win. After making sure that everyone had their bets correctly recorded, everyone signed their names and applied a little bit of chakra to ensure that the document was now official. Flashback end. Minato couldn't help but laugh at the whole situation he found not only himself but his entire family in. Who would have thought that the final round of the exams would get them all this involved? In fact, at this very moment in a forest near the Leaf Village. Ha! Take this. Menma shouted, lashing out with a quick jab intent on connecting with Jiraiya's jaw. Only to have Jiraiya sweep his feet out from under him and follow up with a hit that slammed him into the ground. Ooh-oh, Menma groaned, his head was spinning as he saw his godfather smirk, clearly amused by his current position and action. You're getting better, but you're still too naive. Did you honestly think something like that would work on those in the exam finals? If it won't work on them, it definitely won't work on me. Jiraiya boasted, puffing his chest out before striking a dramatic pose. This made Menma's eye twitch at the scene. He was sure that he could see sparkles emanating from his godfather's eyes as he held his pose, clearly not acknowledging that Menma had gotten back up. Narrowing his eyes, he quickly made a few clones before re-engaging the older shinobi, as Jiraiya cracked a grin at his godson's stubbornness as he moved to intercept the clones. Bending slightly to the left, he avoided the kick from one of the clones before sending said into the clone approaching from the right with a well-placed grab and throw. Ducking the incoming blow from a punch that was aimed at his head, he launched an uppercut that caught the clone. Turning to face the next clone that came in from the side. Well, the real Menma came at him from behind only to be firmly planted on his ass, again. Grr. Why are you so good at this, you old pervert? Menma shouted, his face red with anger and frustration. Ha! I told you, kid. I am the great Toad Sage of Mount Mamboku. Jiraiya declared while striking another pose. This only served to fuel Menma's anger even more. Shouting, Menma again quickly made a few dozen clones before he launched another attack against his godfather, not noticing that he was facing a clone to begin with as the original watched on from a tree nearby. You are not winning this bet, Tsunade. I will get that date with you, this I swear. Jiraiya shouted in his head, intent on making his godson strong enough to win the tournament in order to claim his prize, as Menma was thrown into the river nearby before he shouted in indignation. Faster, Menma. Let your fists fly with all the speed you have. Clone Jiraiya said as Menma just sweat dropped at his godfather's seemingly random rambling. Meanwhile in a clearing near the Leaf Village. Rumi-chan. You're never going to get anywhere with those weak punches. Tsunade roared as the fires of determination burned brightly in her eyes. Rushing in, Narumi quickly delivered a volley of blows that Tsunade blocked single-handed, causing the young blonde to widen her eyes before she was sent flying with a single finger flick. Ouch. That hurt Ba-chan. Narumi cried out as she rubbed her now red forehead. But she had to quickly roll out of the way as Tsunade rushed to engage her, her deadly flicks causing Narumi to pale before dodging out of their path, as even just a single finger flick was enough to cause major pain. Quit dodging and fight like you mean it. Tsunade shouted, she definitely wasn't going to lose this bet, there was way too much at stake for her to lose. Plus, if Jiraiya won she would never hear the end of it. Take this. Narumi shouted as she sidestepped and launched a reverse roundhouse kick at her godmother, only to have her kick stopped and be thrown into the lake nearby. Hi. This water's freezing, you old hag. Narumi screamed as she frantically made her way to land as Tsunade's brow started twitching as tick marks broke out on her head. What did you just call me, Rumi-chan? Tsunade whispered as Narumi began to sweat as she backed up. Oh crap, she whimpered as Tsunade reached out and grabbed her head in an ironclad grip before she could back up far enough. The poor girl started to shake in fear and grimace in pain. I am not old. She roared before throwing Narumi back into the lake, the girl letting out another shriek as she hit the cold water. Yet again elsewhere in a field near the Leaf Village, ha. Mito shouted as she traded blows with her godfather. Not bad, Mito-chan. But don't forget the follow-up. Orochimaru shouted as he grabbed his goddaughter's wrist and threw her. Mito cried out when she hit the ground, rolling in an attempt to spread the impact over a wider surface area. As she got back to her feet, he was already on top of her as he lashed out with a kick that sent her flying a short distance. Not giving her a chance to recover, Orochimaru was about to strike the final blow, but stopped when the Mito that was flying dispersed into a mass of snakes. At this, Mito erupted out of the ground with an uppercut in an attempt to catch her godfather by surprise, as he jumped back, not letting up. Mito rushed forward to try and keep him on the defensive, only to be caught in his binding snake glare as a snake the size of a full-grown human was now coiled. Around her the fight was over. Or that would have been the case if not for the fact that the Mito caught by the snake simply crumbled to dust. As the real Mito emerged from the ground behind her godfather who was smiling at her ingenuity. You're getting better, Mito-chan. Just you wait, by the time I'm done with you you'll win the finals for sure. Orochimaru confidently said as he turned to face her. Mito let a smile appear on her face at the compliment. They resumed their training as Mito was once again sent flying. Catching Mito while in mid-air with his hyper-extended arm, Orochimaru slammed her into the ground as Mito let out a gasp of pain. Getting to her feet she dodged the incoming strikes while weaving a set of hand sings. Using wind style. Gale palm, she created some distance as she took a fighting stance before re-engaging, sending a barrage of shadow snakes at her godfather, only for him to dodge most of them. Catching one of the snakes before it could strike, crushing it in his hand, Orochimaru lashed out with another strike, forcing her to a knee before he helped her up and told her to take a break. Sitting under a nearby tree as they took said break, the two analyzed what she needed to improve on and where she was lacking, as well as her strengths and how to capitalize on them. It was in a way refreshing for him to have someone so young who was able to keep up with him on an intellectual level to a certain point. And still yet again, in the Uzumaki clan estate training grounds, Kunga and Kushina were trading blows as they trained. Good Kunga-chan. But you left yourself open. Kushina stated as she grabbed her son's arm and threw him on his back. Ah. He gasped out when he hit the ground, only for him to poof in a plume of smoke as the shadow clone dissipated. Kushina was already moving, dodging the real Kunga as he lashed out with a kick that stuck air before Kushina grabbed his leg and flipped him, only for Kunga to use his momentum to carry him into a backflip that gave him a bit of space. Not letting go of her momentum, Kushina rushed him, striking with a flurry of blows. Weaving though the strikes as they came at him like the scrolls for the Uzumaki Taijutsu style had taught him, like a raging current flow though the battle. As he did this he flashed through a quick set of hand signs, while he sent a kick for Kushina's head that caused her to back off so she didn't get hit. As she did this she too went through a set of hand signs as Kunga called. Water style. Water hail jutsu. Cupping his hands together and thrusting them forward, unleash a barrage of water bullets at Kushina. Finishing only a hand sign behind him she countered with water style. Water wall. Using the water from the large pond in the training ground to fuel her jutsu, she stopped his cold. You're getting better, Kunga. Once I'm done with you the finals will be all yours. Kushina cheerfully stated before they took a quick break before they resumed their training. Kushina was determined to win that bet even if she felt a little guilty for betting against Naruto. Yet while all this was going on she couldn't help but wonder how his training was going. XXXX. While all of this was going on it seems that a certain spy was up to no good as Kabuto made his way to the prearranged location between him and his contact. It was the middle of the night, so most residents, both ninja and civilian, had turned in for the night. However, this was a much different story for others. As one such Jounin was waiting for said spy to arrive. After waiting for about an hour clearly to Baki's displeasure, Kabuto Yakushi made his appearance. Kabuto. Baki greeted the white-haired youth. Baki. Kabuto replied back. You're late. Baki noted in annoyance. Kabuto shrugged as he said sorry about that. Had to get away from some watchers earlier. Seems they're on to me earlier than we expected. He said with a nonchalance that irritated Baki more than he would ever admit to. As to who tipped them off I have my suspicions but nothing concrete. Baki then spoke if they're onto you, you do realize that if they learn of our meeting here, our plan to destroy Konoha and afterwards will be ruined, correct? Kabuto shrugged as he replied, while not everything is panning out quite to plan due to one or two complications, things are still for the most part going according to schedule. Does this have to do with the Uchiha who was marked by your master? Or is it due to the fact that the Uzumaki is now fight Gaara instead of Sasuke like you had originally planned? Baki questioned. Indeed, but these inconveniences will be dealt with in due time by those who have been selected for the task. At this Baki just nodded as he accepted a scroll from Kabuto who continued in any case though, here are the plans with the 1 or 2 revisions we had in mind. Make sure to pass it along to your subordinates. Baki simply nodded again. As this was going on it seemed that the tail who had managed to keep his distance so as to not be detected made to leave, but in doing so gave himself away. Baki and Kabuto looked unperturbed as they both had suspected that someone would attempt to spy on their little meeting. So, do you want me to get rid of our little rat? Kabuto asked a half-masked man. Baki shook his head as he spoke. No, allow me. I can't let you lot do all the work. And besides, one little mouse is no big deal. At this point, all 3 ninjas shined away from their spots, but only 2 would end up surviving the night, as said rat as they had called him, ended up being dealt with violently. XXXX. 1 week before the finals near Full Moon Cavern Naruto trained with the wolves relentlessly as Arashi and Yasuo the twin brothers both oversaw the young man's current training. Remembering just how intense his training had been thus far. Flashback start. Again. Arashi barked at this Naruto's side and took his position again. They had been at this for 4 days straight now, and while Naruto was getting better with each passing day, he was still a ways away from mastering the concept of being completely still. The brothers had been training him non-stop for 2 weeks already, and they were now on the most difficult part of the training that anyone could face. As Naruto tried again and failed again as he fell into the broiling hot water beneath a stone spire that he had been trying to balance a stone plate on and got burned again. The whole point of this exercise was to train one's body to be perfectly still, so as to quote be one with nature. Unquote, but all Naruto had been doing for the past few days was trying to balance on a stone plate on the tip of one of the spires that jutted out from the natural hot springs near Full Moon Cavern. Now I know what you're thinking, it's a hot spring, how could it hurt him? Well, hot springs are made when the water reaches a temp PF 122F and up. These springs can far exceed the boiling point of water. They can also be highly acidic and have been known to cause severe burns and even death in some cases. This particular spot was closer to the active underground vents that heated the water. Having surfaced from the hot water that burned his bare skin and now getting healing from Yasuo so that the burns won't leave any damage. Naruto was fed up with this whole thing. How is me being one with nature going to help me in battle when my enemies are going to be coming at me trying to kill me? He asked, perturbed at the idea that standing perfectly still was going to help him best his opponent. At this, Yasuo answered the young man's question with a question like he often did. When fighting a superior enemy, do you attack him head-on or do you wait for an opening? What does that have in common with this? Naruto shot back. Humor me. The wolf responded. Know if your foe is stronger, you would wait for them to reveal an opening or show a weakness that you could exploit. Naruto commented, still having no idea what that had to do with this. So, what happens when your enemy doesn't have a weakness or is too fast for you to exploit an opening? Yasuo answered by posing another question. The ability to use nature energy will help you in many ways, one of which will be to overcome your physical limits. Arashi stated, stepping up to Naruto, but this can only be achieved when you master the ability to become one with nature. Looking at them, you would never guess that they were brothers based on their fur color and looks. Arashi had charcoal-colored fur and electric blue eyes, and a gray strip-like pattern down his back, while his right eye had a lightning bolt mark under it. Yasuo, on the other hand, had pale white fur with no pattern and red eyes. In fact, one would have thought that Yasuo was related to Usagi rather than Arashi. Naruto had met them several times back when he had first been here, and he had even made the mistake of commenting on this fact, which he would never do again. Lest he be subject to another 2 weeks of grueling taijutsu training with Arashi, alone. We have been training you so that when the time comes you will be able to use this power, but if you think it's so lacking, perhaps a demonstration is in order. Arashi said, motioning for Naruto to follow. The brothers led him to a place a slight distance away from the hot springs, to an area that was ringed with a few dozen large stone wolf statues. A large boulder the size of a small house could be seen not far from the space. Arashi led Naruto to the center of the ring of statues and turned to face him. "Strike me," he ordered. Naruto blinked before responding. "I thought you were going to show me what this whole one with nature thing was all about." "I am now. Strike me with your fists and come at me like you mean it," Arashi ordered. At this, Naruto would normally have hesitated, but when one of the wolves gave an order, Naruto learned fast that you should heed said order, lest it come back to bite you. Rushing forward at his top speed, Naruto threw a punch at the wolf, only to strike empty air, as the wolf now stood 2 foot to the left of where he had been. Naruto, stunned by the speed at which the wolf had moved, rushed him again and met with the same result as before. Trying his hardest, he struck again and again at the wolf, only to have his fist meet empty air each time, Arashi always seeming out of reach. Now perched atop said boulder, Arashi taunted the blonde, who was out of breath by this point. "I said to strike me, or is this all you have?" At this question, he jumped and struck the boulder with his paw. The boulder shattered like it was made of glass, along with the ground around the boulder 5 feet in all directions. Naruto, both amazed by the feat and on his ass, gaped at the display as Arashi stepped forward. "Do you think it's so useless now?" the wolf questioned. "Nature energy is the very essence of the elements flowing through you in their most primal state, yet in harmony with your body. With it you will be faster, stronger, more durable. You will not tire as you did when you were trying to strike my brother," Yasuo said, coming to stand next to Arashi. Naruto looked at the damage one strike did and could only compare it to Tsunade in terms of pure raw strength. Now he wanted to train even harder. "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get this done so I can learn how to use this stuff," Naruto exclaimed, only to have a damper put on his mood. "We must warn you first, the reason that we have been having you try to be one with nature has also been to see if you could learn to sense nature energy on your own and have a bit of time to practice," Arashi stated, which made Naruto cock his head just like a dog. "Why would that matter?" he questioned, not understanding why this would be important. "Do you see those stone wolf statues over there?" Yasuo asked. "Yeah, what about them?" Naruto replied. "Those are the one before you who have tried to master nature energy and failed," Arashi stated, making Naruto somewhat confused. "What do you mean they are the ones who failed to learn how to use nature energy?" Naruto asked, slightly worried. "Those aren't just statues, Naruto. Nature energy comes with a risk. Too little of the energy and you will not be able to use it effectively or get the power boost that you need in order to unlock what is known as Sage Mode or even achieve physical transformation that some have managed to achieve. But too much of the energy is much worse. The energy will consume you," Yasuo said as he looked at the statues. Naruto blinked, thinking he understood what they were trying to get at. "Wait, you're telling me that if I screw up and take in too much nature energy, then," he trailed off, looking back to the statues. "Yes, you will become one with nature permanently," Arashi stated with a tone of finality before continuing. "Do you still wish to learn how to use nature energy?" At this, Naruto looked back and forth from the 2 wolves in front of him and the statues before his face changed to a look of determination as he nodded to the brothers. "Then you will need to come with us to see the sage so you can perform the rite. Even then there is a chance that you will not be able to endure the rite," they said, and walked off with Naruto following. When they arrived at their destination, the sage was waiting for them. "So, the young pup has come seeking knowledge, but is he ready?" asked the sage. "Is one who seeks knowledge they know not ever truly ready?" asked Yasuo in answer to the sage's question. The sage simply nodded. "If you seek to prove yourself, then step forward." Naruto stepped up at the sage's request. "I seek to learn how to use nature energy to achieve Sage Mode." "Very well, but know that if you should fail the rite it will most likely mean your death." Wait, what do you mean it will be my death? I thought that if I took in too much nature energy, I would become a stone statue. Naruto asked, hoping that it won't come to that. Which I guess is a death of sorts. This is true, but the right is different. Some who attempt to use nature energy can't, their bodies simply reject the energy. The right will cause your body to be infused with a small portion of nature energy. If your body is able to withstand the right, you will be able to use the energy, but if your body rejects the energy, it will destroy your body from the inside out. I have only ever witnessed one who failed the right and managed to survive it. Naruto gulped at this statement from the sage. I ask you, do you wish to proceed knowing the consequences should you fail? If I am to become stronger, then I have no other option. Naruto said, gaining a measure of respect from the sage at his determination and conviction, even if they were a bit misguided. Then approach and be given the right, young pup. The sage replied. My name is Naruto and you are? He responded. I'm known as Sjai. Young Naruto, now approach so we may begin. Sjai ordered. Naruto stepped forward and dropped to one knee. At this, Sjai approached him and used one of his claws to cut a shallow line in his paw. Then he reached out his bleeding paw and placed it on Naruto's shoulder. At his touch, Naruto felt like a hot branding iron had been placed to his skin, but he couldn't move. The pain was intense, but Naruto gritted his teeth and didn't cry out. When the pain subsided, he felt something in its place, feeling like he had just been given a shot of pure energy to his whole body, yet it was like he was at peace. When Sjai pulled his paw away, it revealed a mark that resembled a wolf totem tattoo, made using his blood as a form of ink, which had turned to a dark red color. He nodded at this and then bowed to Naruto. You have passed the rite and are now truly deserving of the title Wolf's Blood. Continue your training to be one with nature, and you should be able to sense it easier now. Sjai remarked. However, this will not make it any easier to master being one with nature that is still dependent on you. Flashback end. Sjai was right, it had still been a grueling challenge to learn Sage Mode. The rite had made it so his body would recognize and be able to sense nature energy a bit easier, but it didn't make it any easier to master or any more or less dangerous. From what he had been told by Sjai, the toads of Mount Mamboku were the only ones who had developed tools to help with the process of learning how to use nature energy and to master Sage Mode. He had also been told that Hashirama Senju had mastered Sage Mode, but it was not said where he learned it from. Sjai believed that much like the wolves, Hashirama learned without the aid of tools and perfected his art by instinct alone. Naruto took pride in the fact that if this were true, it would mean he was following in the footsteps of one of the greatest shinobi to ever live. For the first week after that point, Naruto had been trying to achieve Sage Mode with little results, since he was trying too hard not to take in too much and it was impeding his progress. Till he remembered something Yasuo had said about the energy. Nature energy is the very essence of the elements flowing through you in their most primal state, yet in harmony with your body. It was the last part of this statement that caught his attention. Harmony was what he was looking for, not just taking in the energy, but being in harmony with it. So far he had been fixated on only taking in enough energy without overdoing it, but now he knew different. Focusing on that point, he shifted his focus from not taking in too much to finding that point of harmony he was looking for. He also learned that if he hadn't had his massive chakra reserves to begin with, he wouldn't have even been able to attempt this. But sure enough, with only 3 days left before the final exam, Naruto achieved Sage Mode, and much like Hashirama, he showed no signs of what the wolves described as a change in the physical features of his body to that of a wolf, meaning he had done it. He hadn't mastered it yet, but he had taken a very important step. On the day before the exam finals, Naruto was working on a new technique that he had found in a scroll in the Uzumaki family library 2 months before the exam started. It may have been by chance, but it was definitely a fortuitous find. As he was going through the hand signs for one of the jutsu listed on the scroll, Usagi approached him in her wolf form. "Ah, Naruto, hard at work still, I see?" she questioned as the blonde stopped his hand signs to focus on the conversation. "Hey Usagi, checking up on me?" Naruto asked. "Well, it would be rude of me to ignore you, and I hear that my daughter was able to help you out in your exams," she replied. "Tell her thanks for me, by the way." "Why don't you tell me yourself?" Akiko commented as she walked up to the pair. "Good to see you again too, Akiko," Naruto said, smiling at the she-wolf's approach. "Are you heading back soon?" asked Akiko. At this, Naruto just shook his head. "Not yet, I still have time to train, so I plan to use as much as I can before I have to leave," Naruto answered. "Well, don't train too long or you might end up being late," Usagi joked, chuckling slightly since she was one of the few he had told about the time he overslept on the mission in Wave. Naruto just groaned at that implication. Not this time, not again, he thought to himself. XXXX. The next morning came swiftly as the Hidden Leaf Village was busier than ever. What with all the stalls and vendors that were setting up for the Chunin exams, influx of traffic from the other hidden villages who would come to observe. Along with all those who will be spectating the event as civilians, the amount of traffic was going to be through the roof. The village would be so packed that there would be nothing but standing room left. Not to mention the chance of any enemy that has a reason to attack the Leaf could use the event as a distraction, which is why extra security had been allocated to both the venue and the village border. The final part of the exams was set to start at 10 sharp. Naruto had been prepared ahead of time, having set up a reverse summoning seal in the clearing that he and Kunga used to train. Having carved the seal into one of the trees. So, he had made it back with little effort and time wasted. The guards would probably wonder how he had made it past them. However, they hadn't even noticed him when he and Kunga, and even sometimes reluctantly Choji and Shikamaru, had pulled the many pranks that had happened over the years, this counting from when he was 6 till now. Though having been overlooked by 99% of the village had at least one advantage: it made it easier to get around without being noticed. Since he had about an hour before he needed to be at the stadium, so he decided to get some breakfast, stopping off at Ichiraku Ramen, much to Am's and Tucha's delight. As he ordered a shimeya ramen with fried sliced pork dashi, menma, the fermented bamboo shoot not his brother, nigi, and was topped with a boiled egg. After finishing his breakfast, he had about 45 minutes left before the exam final started, so he decided to look around a bit, taking in the setup for the stalls and vendors who would be overly busy during the week. Since the exams would be held over several days, the vendors would be milking the events for all it would be worth. And the celebration ceremony that would be held after. With 15 minutes left, he made his way to the stadium where the finals would take place. At about the same time Naruto was walking around, Kunga was sitting on a bench at the top of the Hokage monument and simply taking a moment to relax and enjoy the calm before the storm along with the scenery. Only to notice a girl with light red hair and brown eyes playing a flute as she sat in a lone tree nearby. She was dressed in a black shirt under a tan tunic with elbow-length sleeves and black skin-tight shorts. She also wore black arm warmers, traditional black shinobi sandals with calf-length leg warmers covered by bandages, and a purple rope-like belt tied in an inverted bow around her waist. The top of her look, she wore a black bandana-like hat with bandages wrapped around the sides and pipe-like fixtures on top. She seemed oblivious to Kunga's presence as she sat going about playing her flute. He made no move to talk to her or move closer so as to hear the music better, he simply sat and listened. The music she played sounded sad as it spoke of something that only she knew about that weighed down her heart. In a way he could relate to her about that since he was hiding something himself. She played for a bit longer, then stopped and stood about to leave, only to finally notice Kunga where he was sitting. In fact, if she hadn't done a double take she would have missed him as her gaze passed right over him without so much as a second thought the first time. She scowled at his back and was about to leave only for Kunga to make her stop. "Your music is beautiful, you know," in a sad way. Slightly shocked at the statement, it took a second before she recovered and returned the scowl to her face, answering with a crass, "What do you care how my music sounds, shithead?" He turned to her and his eyes made contact with hers as he replied, "I simply made a comment, you don't need to get defensive about it. Take it as a compliment, I meant what I said, your music is beautiful." The girl just sneered at his remark. She was ready to go since she was just waiting around till she was given the signal and her team was to be mobilized for the plan. Since she was the least conspicuous looking of the four, she was their scout. But till things got interesting she was just to sit and wait. "I don't really give a damn what you think, shithead, so next time keep your comments to yourself." She shot back a bit loud since they were only about a yard and a half from each other. "If you didn't care you wouldn't have remarked about it in the first place." Kunga replied calmly, never looking away as she turned around. The girl paused as she had turned to leave. Why had she responded to his comment in the first place? Most of the time it was out of spite or for the fact that someone had ticked her off or needed to be put in their place. But this time it was different. This time someone was complimenting her, so why did she feel so defensive about it? Maybe because compliments were something that she had rarely ever received before and only from certain people, so she didn't know how to process it when anyone else did it. Look, you can say you don't care, but then it makes your music lose the emotion it invokes. It loses the beauty of it, and all that's left is a hollow sound that means nothing, just something pretty on the outside, but empty on the inside. Feeling like he had just made a jab at her, she rounded on him, ready rip him a new one, only for her retort to die on her lips as she blinked in confusion. There was no one there, the kid was gone. All that was left was a note on the bench where he had been sitting. She walked over and picked it up. She thought about just ripping it up. She wanted to, she should, what did she care about some kid and what he thought? Yet something was making her hesitate. It was what he had said to her. No one on her team had ever said anything like that or done anything to show they cared, then again why should they? She knew how her team felt about each other, they were just the ones who had survived the selection process. Instead of ripping up the note she decided to read it. Opening it, she found that there is a second folded note placed inside. Taking it out, she looked at the first note and read it. Sorry to have to leave, but I have an exam final to make it to. Who knows, maybe you will be there to watch, maybe not, it's your choice. Since you're from the sound, I guess you plan to watch since one of the ninja from your village made it to the finals. Also hope that this helps. Found it in a book in my family's library, just remember to add a bit of chakra. Whatever you decide to do, don't lose your emotions. When that happens, it means that you're already dead inside and it would be a shame to find out you were nothing but a walking corpse. P.S. My name is Kunga Uzumaki Namikaze, not shithead, and next time we meet you owe me a name. The girl blinked at this, then looked to the second note. What did he mean? Hope this helps. She opened the second note, which was actually a copy of a piece of sheet music. The title of the song was written at the top of the page. Deciding to try it out, she raised her flute to her lips, but as she did she hesitated, questioning why she was doing this. However, before she could change her mind, she took a chance and, just like he said, added a bit of chakra and played the song. The music was beautiful, so much so that she almost lost herself in it, but she refocused and played through the whole song. As the music settled over her and the area around her, something felt different. When she finished, she looked around and found that everything seemed brighter as the leaves rustled in the slight breeze. It was as if someone had turned up the color on her visor. Not only that, but she felt different too. It felt like the song had lifted something that had been weighing her down, not physically, but something that had been weighing on her soul. She found herself overwhelmed and she started crying, of all things. But why? What was this feeling that had come over her? It wasn't anything she was used to: pain, anger, rage, hate, sadness, self-loathing, bitterness, jealousy, envy, resentment, fear, emptiness, depression. She was very familiar with these, but what she felt right now was something she had never really experienced before. The closet thing she could compare this feeling to was when she played her flute. She felt happy. No, that wasn't it. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt happy. But then what was it that she felt right now? Whipping away the tears, she looked at the piece of music. The smallest hint of a smile crossed her lips before she folded it back up and placed it in her pouch. With that done, she vanished with the use of body flicker and was gone. Having arrived at the arena 10 minutes before the exam final started, Minato entered the box reserved for the cages to watch the matches dressed in the full attire of his office. Only 2 minutes after this, the Kazekage entered the box, greeting Minato with his 2 bodyguards in tow. Lord Kazekage, welcome. I hope your trip here was a pleasant one. Indeed, Lord Hokage, it was. Thank you for having us here for this event. Of course, we wouldn't dream of depriving you of the chance to observe your young talent and how far they have come. These events are also meant to help foster relations between villages. Minato said, motioning for his fellow Kage to have a seat as he took his own. The exams were about to begin, and they were sure to be, if nothing else, very entertaining this year. As this was going on, the participating candidates of the exam made their way onto the field for the opening ceremonies. However, they seemed to be one person short since Sasuke was missing from the group. That, however, didn't stop the crowd from cheering for them. When the cheering died down, Minato stood and addressed the gathered audience. Welcome all to the village hidden in the leaves. We welcome you to the final stage of the Jounin selection exams. We thank each and every one of you for coming to show your support, and for those who have traveled here to be with us today, we extend our deepest thanks to you and hope that you will enjoy yourselves. We do, however, ask that all those who are in attendance to remain until all of the matches being held today have ended. As you all know, the exam finals will be held over the course of the next several days. So please enjoy the hospitality of the Leaf, and with that out of the way, let the final rounds commence. This is the end of this series. Thanks for watching.